I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we cover legal news from a psychological perspective. I would like to thank, I believe it's God's Dog Mom. I forget the exact username, but I was tagged in this by somebody else who asked me to cover this case. And I was looking for something to cover today. I normally stream on Friday, no, Tuesdays and Saturdays. And so, welcome, Phoenix. Welcome to everybody. Christy was first in the chat. And thank you to everybody for being here. Sarah, thank you for mentioning the Corey Richens case. She had a bond hearing today and Surviving the Survivor, because right before I logged in here, I was listening to her bond hearing, and it sounds like they're doing other pretrial motions as well. And so I think they're doing more than just bond today. But and we mentioned that Lori Reese, and it's Reese with the S, I believe. I could be wrong. Y'all know me in names, but she has been covering the Corey Richens case as well. Let's do a brief overview of this case. This case is a heavy one, and we're going to listen into the opening statements. And so I do think this is a tragic case. It involves the capital M of a 13-month-old, and she's alleging that she was insane at the time of the event. So today is just opening statements, and they might get into some evidence. I only plan to cover opening statements today. When the defense brings in the mental health experts, I am also going to cover that too. Oh, it's Reese with a C. Thank you. So every time I look for her, I do an S, and that's just me and Reese's PCs. Like I'm thinking of the candy, I think has an S. And we will see how this does with the jury. We will see. Let's give a brief overview of this case. This case comes out of Georgia, and Chloe Driver is on trial for the capital M of her 1-year-old daughter. And the incident happened December 8th of 2020 in the Mountain View subdivision of Cherokee County. Upon arrival, police found Chloe Driver and her daughter in an upstairs an upstairs bedroom. Her daughter later died at the hospital. Driver, who was 20 years old at the time of the charge, has entered a plea of guilty due to reasons of insanity. She is facing charges of malice, capital M, 2 counts of felony M, aggravated assault, and cruelty to children. The incident happened on December 8th, 2020 at that home when yes. Okay, so they restated this part in the article. I have an article that covers this history down in the description. Okay, so they are going to start with the fact that she is agreeing that she did this. So her lawyer wants the judge to discuss if she understands this. So that is where they are starting. We're going to start at normal speed. If I need to speed it up, I will. And we will go from here. Let's skip. Let's make this. No. Okay, good.
It just takes a minute sometimes. Anything else, Ms. Trethaway?
Yes, just wanted to let the court know that in case you wanted to inquire of Ms. Driver, that we intend going forward to admit that she did in fact commit the acts alleged in the indictment. I didn't know if Your Honor wanted to inquire of her as to whether or not she agrees with her, had enough time to discuss our strategy with us, and whether or not she agrees to and understands what we are doing.
All right. Could you place your client under oath, please?
You want her to stand, or could you?
She can remain seated.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the information testimony about to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Okay, you can put your hand down.
All right, Ms. Driver. And I hadn't really anticipated doing this, but since you brought it up, Ms. Trethewey, as far as inquiry, I'll ask you first, Ms. Trethewey. I know that, at various points in this, there have been concerns about not only Ms. Driver's criminal responsibility based on her mental health status, but also her competency to stand trial. Have there been any recent concerns that you've had in preparing for trial and in communicating with her?
No, Your Honor.
So, all right, thank you. Ms. Driver, are you taking any prescription medication?
So there are allegations that this case may have cult involvement. That is my understanding that that is part of the defense. I am very new to this case, and we will be talking as we go. And we're about to find out if she is on any medication. So I just heard about this case probably less than an hour ago. I saw that they were streaming it live, and so we will but the allegations is that that there is some cult like involvement in this case.
Medication right now? And I don't recall specific diagnoses that you may have had, but do you feel like whatever symptoms you've experienced previously are managed by the medication at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
You understand that you have a constitutional right to be mentally competent at the time that you go to trial. And the way the law defines that is that you have to be able to understand what you're charged with, what your position is in regard to those charges, meaning you have to be able to understand the state's evidence against you and the risk of going to trial. And you have to be able to communicate with your attorneys and be able to understand what they're telling you and vice versa. Do you have any concerns about any of that as you sit here?
No, ma'am.
All right. And then the issue that Ms. Trethewey brought up. You understand that a special plea, although I don't think that's actually the term anymore, but a notice of insanity defense has been filed on your behalf by your attorneys. And what that means during the trial is that the state they always have the burden of proving your guilt, that you committed the offense by evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, the proof that you are not guilty by reason of insanity is something that is your burden, but the jury will be given a verdict form ultimately that says they can find you guilty of the counts that you're charged.
So she was 20 years old at the time of the incident. So I believe she's currently 24 or 25, depending on when her birthday is, because this incident happened in 2020. And it's my understanding that she was 20 years old at that time. All right. And I like hearing this part that the judge is advising her of her rights. And I like that we're able to get this portion as well. So I skipped over the fact. So Law and Crime and Fox 5 both filed late motions to be able to stream this trial as well. And the judge denied their motions today because they weren't timely. But the stream might be available. So right now, Court TV is the only one that has the pool feed, the feed of this trial. If you would like to see the full trial video, I always link the main video, the video that I'm covering, down in the description, because this is a live trial that started today.
With just guilty or not guilty, or they can find you not guilty by reason of insanity or guilty but mentally ill. Ms. Trethewey has stated that y'all have discussed
I wonder if there was a delay due to competency issues. I will try to look that up in the background if there were ever um, issues that delayed her trial. I'm not sure. All right, we'll keep it going.
a trial strategy of acknowledging you committed the offenses that you're charged with in this indictment. If you admit those, then you are essentially, you are telling the jury, I agree that I could be found guilty of malice murder. I could be found guilty of felony murder. There are 2 counts of that. I could be guilty of aggravated assault and guilty of cruelty to children in the 1st degree. You're asking the jury not to do that based on the evidence that's going to be presented about your mental health status and other facts and circumstances surrounding the case. But by admitting you committed the acts, you are telling the jury, essentially the state doesn't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed them.
She did it.
I did want to just clarify that we're acknowledging as part of our defense the physical acts. We're not conceding mental state or any burden upon the state to prove the intent behind the crimes as well. We're the physical act, the actus reus involved in this case.
Okay, so you're not admitting malice, you're not admitting intent. I guess the malice maliciously is another element of the offense of the cruelty to children in the 1st. All right, well, I hope I didn't confuse you then, ma'am. That's what I understood Ms. Trethewey to be saying, and I was incorrect. So to restate it then, if your lawyers on your behalf admit that you committed the acts that you are charged with, and you are admitting to a number of the elements of the crimes that the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You're not admitting to.
And so the good thing, I think the judge is just clarifying, she can't say that somebody else did it. Like, she's admitting, I'm the one that did this, but she's saying she did it because she was insane, that she was not guilty by reason of insanity. And the state, I think, believes that she was not insane at the time.
All of the elements, that is, you're not admitting to malice or intent, but you are, sort of taking off the state's checklist a number of elements that they would otherwise have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that? Am I saying that in a way that makes sense to you? And if you have any questions, if I'm confusing you or not being clear, please let me know. And I'm just trying to make sure that you understand and agree with that trial strategy, that presentation of the case. Okay. Anything else before we bring the jury out this morning?
They're going to bring the jury, so we're going
when
to.
did the cameras start?
Now.
Or they already started? They're on. Okay. Just didn't know. All right. Let's bring the jury in.
So I don't know if this is this judge's first trial that's been streamed. I thought that was because the camera started from as soon as they called the case. So I skipped over the part where she denied the request for Law and Crime and Fox 5 to be able to stream today. She might take a look at their motions later, and they have some agreements. So I've turned off the live chat because there are some requirements for chat. And so the chat's going to disappear. So the live chat for this court, because I think there are certain requirements that Court TV has agreed to be able to stream. And so, and I don't know exactly what those requirements are. So the live chat's available live, but it won't be available on replay. All right, so let's bring out the judge. Let's bring out the jury, I think. Let's see. We're going to Zoom. She looks younger than 24 to me. Like she looks young to me.
Actually, as we get started here this morning, I'm going to ask that you please stand and raise your right hand so that I can administer your trial oath.
Oh, to the
You
jury.
swear or affirm that you shall well and truly try the issue formed upon this bill of indictment between the state of Georgia and Chloe Alexis Driver, who is charged with 1 count of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count of aggravated assault, and 1 count of cruelty to children in the first degree, and a true verdict give according to the evidence. If you do so swear or affirm, please state I do. All right, thank you. You can be seated. I appreciate all of you returning to us today. I hope you had a good long weekend. As we begin, I want to note to you that you may have already observed that there are cameras in the courtroom. We have been contacted by various media outlets about broadcasting this trial. And so I want to explain that to you a little bit. The Constitution, both the U.S. Constitution and the Georgia Constitution, provide that a defendant is entitled to a public trial. That is a fundamental principle of our justice system. And the purpose of it is to make sure that the public is aware of what is going on with essentially their elected officials and their system of government. And I'm going to apologize to you because I have a scratchy throat, and if I have to put a cough drop in my mouth, I'm going to do it. And the purpose, the way that we started having public trials was that I think I told you before jury selection, most of our jury system we inherited from the English, from the British system of government, and jury trials began in part to be open and not to have, the king or queen be able to prosecute people behind closed doors. If you've ever heard this saying or phrase, star chamber, that's where it came from. So it is a fundamental and important principle in criminal law. It is also the express policy of the state of Georgia to allow public access to courtrooms and to court proceedings. And so the laws are in place that allow the media to cover this in order to allow the public to understand what goes on in a court proceeding. There are open records requirements of other branches of government. You may have seen, a county commission meeting on television, or perhaps if you're a real political nerd like me, you may have watched C-SPAN or the state legislature. They're on TV too. So this is, similar to that in that there will be media coverage.
I love this judge. I don't. So Judge Ellen let me turn off captions. McElia, maybe? I'm not sure. But Judge Ellen, you might get added to my top 5 judges. I like how thorough she's being and how she's explaining things and not assuming that the jury already understands something. And so I love the way that she's explaining this. I can tell, like I can get a vibe for a judge relatively quickly. And I like this judge.
I think all of us in the court system got a little more used to it during the pandemic because there was a special rule put in place that we could keep crowds out of the courtroom so that we could keep people socially distant, but we had to live stream everything that we were doing. And so we've all sort of gotten used to being live streamed and having people come up to us and say, I can't believe you did this, or I can't believe you said this, or thank you for doing this, or whatever. Your identities are going to be protected during this process because we know that you are not familiar with this. You will be referred to by number. You will not be on camera. You will not be allowed to be approached by anybody from the media at any point during the trial. We know that y'all are not used to this, and we are going to preserve your privacy and the integrity of this process. We're going to do everything we can to do that. The court administrator is viewing this in real time, and there's a delay in broadcasting it. And if there's anything that comes up that is...
Wow. So they have somebody watching the stream to make sure that nothing inappropriate comes up. because in the Sarah Boone trial, a situation came up where the cameras were catching the attorneys' laptops, and their laptop has their work product and all those things, and so they ended up having to they warned the cameras that, like, they needed to make sure to not focus on, or to not have the attorneys' laptops in view. I also thought the fact that we could kind of see the specific books on the table and things, I think, but it was on the table, so it is what it is. But yeah, I thought all of that was interesting. So I'm glad that she's mentioning this.
Not kosher according to the rules, then we're going to, we'll make adjustments to that. So I just want to make you aware of all of those things before we get started. Now, also, I'm going to give you some preliminary instructions on some fundamental principles of criminal law and the procedures that we will follow during the trial. That's okay. I'll let you get adjusted. Laws of the state of Georgia. I want to emphasize to you that the indictment and the plea are the legal procedures by which the charges are brought, and they are not evidence. This defendant is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. The defendant enters upon the case with a presumption of innocence in her favor, and this presumption remains with the defendant until it is overcome by the state with evidence that is sufficient to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of the crime charged. No person shall be convicted of any crime unless and until each element of the crime as charged is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof rests upon the state to prove every material allegation of the indictment and every essential element of the crime charged beyond a reasonable doubt. There is no burden of proof upon the defendant whatsoever, and the burden never shifts to the defendant to introduce evidence or to prove innocence. When a defense is raised by the evidence, the burden is on the state to negate or disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt. However, the state is not required to prove the guilt of the accused beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. A reasonable doubt means just what it says. A reasonable doubt is a doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror honestly seeking the truth. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon common sense and reason. It does not mean a vague or arbitrary doubt, but is a doubt for which a reason can be given, arising from a consideration of the evidence, a lack of evidence, or a conflict in the evidence. After giving consideration to all of the facts and circumstances of this case, if your minds are wavering, unsettled, or unsatisfied, then that is a doubt of the law and you should acquit the defendant. But if that doubt does not exist in your minds as to the guilt of the accused, then you will be authorized to convict the defendant. If the state fails to prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, it would be your duty to acquit the defendant. Now, I mentioned that when a defense is raised by the evidence, the burden is on the state to negate or disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the general law. There may be some defenses raised in this case that does not apply to, and I'll give you further instructions on that as the course of the trial goes forward. Under our system, it is my duty as the trial judge to determine the law that applies to the case and to instruct you, the jury, on the specific rules of law that you must apply to the facts in arriving at a verdict. During the trial, I may be called upon to rule upon motions or objections. Nothing I say in making these rulings or at any time during the trial is evidence and should not be considered as any indication that I have any leaning in this.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit because these are just kind of the basic things, Constitution. But she's doing a great job explaining all of this to the jury. Is she crying or okay? Let's play this part right here.
Certain rules of evidence. The purpose of these rules is to assure that only the best and highest evidence is admitted for your consideration, so that you may determine the truth. During the trial, the attorneys have.
Okay, so I think if any of the body language experts take a look at some of this, because to me, she seems to be starting to show some anxiety and stress, but the judge is just reading the instructions. And so if these types of behaviors are kind of leaking out at this point, she could have a lot of body language happening. It'll also be interesting to see if she testifies. Sometimes in insanity defenses, sometimes the defendant does testify, and I will definitely cover that if she testifies. And I'm also going to cover the psychological experts. So the prosecution's expert and then also the defense. So because I think the defense expert will go first and then prosecution will probably have a rebuttal expert. Because if the prosecution thought that yes, she was legally insane at the time of the offense, then they would come to some plea deal. She would be in a state hospital, and that would be that. So let's keep it going.
Have the right to object to the admission of evidence if they believe that its admission would violate a rule of evidence. I will admit or exclude the evidence according to those rules. If I overrule an objection, this means you are not allowed to consider the evidence being offered. On the other hand, if I sustain an objection, this means you may not consider the evidence being offered. You should consider only that testimony and only those exhibits that are admitted, and you should draw no inferences or make no assumption about the evidence objected to if the objection was sustained. You, the jury, must determine the credibility or believability of the witnesses. It is for you to determine which witness or witnesses you will believe and which witness or witnesses you will not believe, if there are some whom you do not believe. In determining the credibility or believability of the witnesses, you may consider all of the facts and circumstances of the case, the manner in which the witnesses testify, their intelligence, their interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the case, their means and opportunity for knowing the facts about which they testify, the nature of the facts about which they testify, the probability or improbability of their testimony, and the occurrences about which they testify. As the fact finder, it is your duty to believe the witnesses whom you think are most believable. It is for you alone to determine what testimony you will believe and what testimony you will not believe. It is important that you pay close attention to all of the evidence as it is presented. View all of the evidence in this case with an open mind and reach no final conclusions until you receive the instruction of the court and you begin your deliberations. It is important that you see and hear all of the evidence as it is presented. I find that sometimes I can't hear a witness, and if I ask a witness to, get closer to the microphone or speak up, it's not trying to emphasize that witness's testimony or any part of that witness's testimony. It just means that I couldn't hear, that I'm concerned that the court reporter may not be able to hear or you may not be able to hear. If there are witnesses you can't hear or exhibits you cannot see, don't hesitate to raise your hand and let us know. After opening statement, the bailiffs will give you notepads and pencils or pens for note taking. As I said, it's important that you pay close attention to all of the evidence. You will hear from numerous.
So they can't start taking notes until after opening statements. That's interesting. So they can't start taking notes until after opening statements because opening statements are technically not evidence. So I don't know if Georgia does that or if that's how she does it in her courtroom.
Witnesses in this case, and we do not have the technology for any kind of real-time playback or transcript of a witness's testimony. So your full attention is important. Note-taking may be part of what helps you recall the testimony, but you're not required to take notes. If you choose to take notes, you should also remember that observing a witness's testimony from the witness stand is one of the ways to evaluate a witness's credibility. These notes are for your personal use and they're not to be shared with one another until you begin your deliberations. We will usually remind you to keep your notepads in the chairs, and the bailiffs will take care of them in the evenings. And we keep the courtroom locked during the evenings during a trial. So your notes will not be shared with anybody until you begin deliberations. Notes are not evidence. They are aids to your memory, and we do take them and destroy them after the conclusion of the trial. You have taken an oath to give a true verdict in this case according to the evidence. For that reason, you must decide this case based solely on the evidence that is presented to you in the courtroom. You may not at any time perform any investigation or research of any kind, either on your own or as a group. You may not consult with anything, any dictionary or anything online about general information about the subject of this trial. Do not look up anything concerning this case or any of the people involved, including the defendant, the witnesses, the lawyers, or the judge. Do not go to any scene where any of the events that are the subject of this trial are alleged to have taken place, or don't use any kind of internet application to view that location. Do not read or listen to any media reports concerning the allegations of this indictment or the trial of this case. And that includes any reports on any form of internet or social media. Do not do any kind of legal research about the rules of evidence or the instructions that you are given about the law that applies to this case. Don't have any discussions among yourselves until I give you permission to begin your deliberations. Until you arrive at a verdict, you may not discuss this case with anyone else by any means, whether in person, in writing, or electronically. I think I may have discussed this earlier, but you may not have any contact with the lawyers of the parties. The attorneys are aware of this, and if they see you out in the hallway, or if they choose and they go the other way, or if they choose not to ride up on the elevator with you, that doesn't mean they aren't friendly people or don't appreciate what you're doing. It just means that they want to avoid any appearance of impropriety, any appearance that they have violated any rule. As I believe I also have already told you, you get to have your cell phones if you want them. They must be turned off when you're in the courtroom, but you can use them during recesses, and make sure that you turn them off when you come back into the courtroom after a recess. The bailiffs are trained and experienced in assisting you if you need and send really regular counseling.
All right. So I believe the state is going to start first. Let's all take a breath. Thank you to everybody that is here. Make sure to go on ahead and give the video a like. And if you like content like this, you can feel free to subscribe. This one's going to get tough. I believe they're going to show pictures of her daughter. And it's my understanding that she, with a knife 4 times in the child's neck. And so this is a heavy case. If it's too much, please watch something fun on these YouTubes, but we're going to keep going.
Children often suffer the consequences of the decisions of adults, and this case is no exception to that. This is Hannah Nicole Driver.
And this program, I'm having, can you move the microphone that's on the lectern a little bit closer to you? Yes, I think you can move it. Is it taped down?
I'm glad that they're going to make sure that the audio is good.
This is Hannah Nicole Driver. On December 8th of 2020, she was 13 months old. This is not the way that you will see her in this trial. Instead, you will see her the way that first responding officers saw her, the way that the EMTs saw her, the way that the ER doctors saw her, and eventually the way that the medical examiner saw her. You will see this 13-month-old beautiful baby girl who had been brutally murdered by her mother, stabbed repeatedly until every bit of life drained out of her, and she died. But I wanted to start with a picture of what Hannah Nicole Driver was like before that happened. You're going to hear that Chloe Driver was her mother, and Chloe Driver was involved in an alternative lifestyle. You're going to hear, as the week goes on, a lot of distracting evidence. You're going to hear a lot of messy evidence about this group, about their belief systems. You are going to hear.
So I think this does involve a cult. She's talking about this group. I think there is a cult involved.
There are a lot of things that take the focus off of Hannah Nicole Driver. And I wanted to start with this photo because what your role is in this case and what your decision is in this case is what happened to Hannah and what the laws are governing the death of Hannah and what your decision is with regard to the murder of Hannah. But you will be confronted this week with a lot of shiny objects, a lot of dramatic, crazy evidence about these people and their viewpoints and their belief systems and their practices. You're going to hear that Chloe Driver was one of 3 wives of a man named Brian Joyce. All of them had alternative religious names that they assigned to each other. Brian Joyce also went by the name Benjamin Ben Michael. Some people call him Z. Chloe Driver went by the name Kuwani. Hannah, the baby, they called Nimsi. The other 2 wives, Jessica and Sarah, they had other religious names as well. But the evidence will be that group, that core group of 3 wives and the husband, Benjamin, that of the 3 wives in 2020, Chloe had been with Benjamin the longest. Of the 3 wives, she was the longest surviving wife of that group. And then after her came Jessica, who had been in the group for about 2 years.
So I would be interested to know how old she was when she married him or when she got involved with this cult. No spoilers if you've already kind of read ahead. Now, if you just know this case and it's not coming from this, but I would be interested about knowing some of those things. And wow, okay. I knew this was coming, but I'm glad the prosecution is starting here because they're going to try to clear it up for the jury. And then the defense is, of course, going to try to have the jury view Chloe as the victim of this cult, of this mentality.
Chloe had been with him for about 3 years. And then Sarah came last. She had been with him for less than a year. But they all lived together as a family. Chloe had a baby, Hannah, with Benjamin. And so it was Benjamin, the 3 wives, and the baby. You'll also hear the evidence that there was another individual that spent a lot of time with them, traveled with them, participated in a lot of their same belief systems. His name's Jason Spillers. You'll see him in this case and hear evidence from him as well. So the belief system. What you will hear is that they had very sort of radical views. They were strict vegans. They only drank purified water. They did not believe in any type of drugs or alcohol, no modern medicine. Hannah never had a birth certificate or went to the doctor. You will hear that they participated in alternative healing practices like drinking their own urine, sensory deprivation, meditation, that they did not believe in modern medicine. You will hear that they collectively as a group engaged in this sort of thought process that they had a higher consciousness than the rest of the world, that they were called upon to challenge the realities of sort of the traditional worldview. And that was something that they all leaned into and felt pride in. And it was collective as the group. They were all like-minded in that way. Now, you're also going to hear that they were pretty nomadic, that they didn't have strong roots anywhere, that they traveled around a lot, that they bounced from place to place, spent time in different locations. None of them are from Cherokee County. It was a sheer coincidence that this act happened in our jurisdiction. I'll get into that. On December the 8th of 2020, they were traveling from North Carolina down to Florida. Benjamin, the husband, had previously lived in a residence at 215 Mountain Vista Boulevard in Canton, Georgia, with a man by the name of Gerald Ablin. Gerald Ablin still lived in that residence on December the 8th of 2020. And so in their travels, Benjamin, Jason Spillers, and 3 wives, Sarah, Jessica, Chloe, and the baby, Hannah, were all caravanning from North Carolina down to Florida in 4 different vehicles, a U-Haul and 3 cars. And they were planning to move down to Florida. And they stopped at Jerry Ablin's house in Canton, Georgia, 3 miles from this courthouse, because Benjamin had stuff in Jerry's basement. And so the plan was for Jason and Benjamin to load up the stuff that was in Jerry's basement into the U-Haul and to get back on the road and head to Florida. What happened was when they got there, two of the wives, Sarah and Jessica, went to one of the upstairs bedrooms to take a nap. And Hannah and Chloe went to another upstairs bedroom to take a nap. Gerald Ablin, the homeowner, worked from home. He's a software engineer. So he was on a Zoom call working, and the women and the baby went to the room so they didn't disturb him. And Jason Spillers and Benjamin went to work moving the things out of the basement into the U-Haul. It was supposed to be a seemingly short stopover, and then they would all get back on the road. And when they were done, and it was time to leave, something happened. This is the residence. You'll hear that when Jason and Benjamin were distracted moving things out of the basement, Chloe Driver at some point went down to the kitchen, got a knife out of the knife block, returned to the room with Hannah, locked the door behind her, and repeatedly stabbed Hannah to death with this knife. She then took the knife and stabbed herself in the neck. This is where Hannah Driver bled to death. You'll hear that Jason and Benjamin were out in the driveway. They were getting ready to go. Sarah and Jessica had come down. They were in the driveway getting ready to go. And Benjamin went upstairs to get Chloe and the baby. And the door was locked. And he heard noises. And he panicked. And he kicked the door down. And he found the scene of his 13-month-old daughter bleeding to death on the bed, and Chloe on the ground with a knife wound to her neck as well. You'll see evidence of him kicking in the door. And you'll hear the witnesses who said they heard the most blood-curdling scream from him. What did you do? What did you do? You will see the body cam footage of the first responders on the scene who rushed in to try to save the baby and Chloe Driver. And what you will see is Benjamin with his hands on Hannah's neck trying to keep her from bleeding to death, and Jason Spillers, the other man that's a part of this group, with his hands on Chloe's neck trying to save her life. You will see these men were in shock. They were desperately trying to help. And you will see the response of first responders, EMTs, and everybody who did everything they could for Hannah and Chloe. You will hear that Hannah died, that she had 4 stab wounds. One of them was a 1.5-inch deep stab wound to her back. The other wounds were 3 stab wounds to the neck, one of which was so deep that it went all the way through her tiny neck, transected her carotid artery, and hit her vertebrae. You are going to hear a lot of evidence about Benjamin, and I don't particularly expect you to like him. I expect you are going to hear that.
So the part that I skipped at the beginning, we're going to take just a breather, just a little break. The part that I skipped at the beginning was somebody's going to testify, and they've said on court calls, because somebody's incarcerated. So one of the people that are incarcerated that is going to testify, they've said that they're going to turn it into a show. And some witnesses, they are not going to show their image through court TV. And so I think the defense or prosecution, somebody was concerned that somebody might start to spew some outrageous stuff when they get on the stand. I will be able to stream this case again on Thursday. So I will plan, so probably from 10 to like almost 4 again on Thursday. I will have a follow-up stream of this case, and I can cover anything that I miss from Wednesday. I have any of the big things that I miss from Wednesday. It does seem like there was a it's a nomadic group. There are 3 wives. She was one of 3 wives, and they had these beliefs that they were better than everyone else, almost like they had this unique connection to God. Everything that they are describing, it does sound like a cult, and that they did not believe in regular, which is, some people cannot believe in regular medicine, and it doesn't mean that they're necessarily in a cult, but this sounds like a high demand closed group. And when I say closed group, it means that they're only connecting with people that are like-minded and in this group. Um, I wonder if any part of her testimony is gonna be that she wanted, I don't know if she wanted to escape this group, but she's saying that she was psychotic and delusional, and so that's what she's gonna say. She is pled not guilty by reason of insanity. She's admitted that, yes, she did do this, and the state believes that it was, that does not believe that she did not understand. Sorry. So in order to be not guilty by reason of insanity, you can't understand the wrongfulness of your actions. Like you have to think that what you're doing is right. Now, Lori Vallow likely believed within her delusional belief that she was doing God's work, and everything that she was doing was justified because she was doing God's work. But she hid her crimes. And so she clearly understood that she shouldn't have done the things, and she's blaming Tylee, her daughter. She's blaming her for all, and it's all a bunch of mess. And so it sounds like everybody found out what happened immediately. I will respect to the jury either way. The defense probably has a mental health expert that is going to say she was actively psychotic, she did not understand. And the difference between not guilty by reason of insanity is that she would stay in a mental hospital uh, for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Like, she would stay in a mental hospital until the hospital cleared her for release. If she's found guilty, then she would go to a prison. Okay. Um, so we haven't heard if there are any personality disorders, and she was 20 years old at the time of all of this. But it sounds like she also tried to unalive herself too. And so that's the weird, confusing thing. Like, and she was the first wife. And normally in cult like groups like this, the first wife normally has a lot of responsibility. And so we're just gonna keep listening to see what happens here. Uh if she had been with him for 3 years, then she likely got into this when she was 17 years old, I'm guessing.
They're not from Cherokee County. But what I want you to remember in this trial is that their belief system and practices are not on trial. We only have jurisdiction over crimes that happened in Cherokee County. And what the evidence will be is that the only crime that happened in Cherokee County was a crime that was committed by Chloe Driver. The evidence will show that the only act committed by Benjamin in Cherokee County was the desperate act to save his baby daughter. And you will see it. Now, the state has the burden of proving that she murdered Hannah and that she intended Hannah's death. And that will be very, very clear from the evidence. The defense is raising the issue of insanity and going to ask you to find her not guilty by reason of insanity. And that is their burden to prove. There is a legal definition of what insanity is, and opening statements are not necessarily the appropriate time for us to get into what the law is and how you apply the law. That will be something that comes at the end of this trial. But what opening statements are for is to give you a roadmap, to help you focus on the important issues and to help you know what to look for when the evidence is coming before you. And so in that regard, the things that I can appropriately tell you is you're going to hear a lot of things in this case about throwing witnesses and evidence, throwing around terms like crazy, mentally ill, insane. And you, as human beings that know the English language, probably use all of those terms kind of interchangeably. But the truth is the law has definitions for things, and they are not the same. So what I would like for you to pay attention to in the presentation of evidence in this case is the evidence that she understood the wrongfulness of her actions, that she understood the difference between wrong and right. And there will be plenty of evidence presented to you that she did. One of those pieces of evidence is when she was sitting in the hospital bed, one of the first things that she wrote to law enforcement, because she could not speak because she had a trach, was, "How long will my prison sentence be for killing her?"
So somebody in an insane state typically would not be thinking about their consequence. So now the defense might try to say in that moment, in that at that time, but that is pretty significant. And often as a culture, we think for a mother to do this to her child, she has to be crazy. And that's why I like covering these cases, because there is a legal definition, and it's going to be up to the court and the jury to determine, does this meet the legal definition? And when the state is talking, you're going to be nodding your head like, yes, yes, okay. And then when the defense gets up, it might be like, okay, so I'm keeping an open mind. I don't have a thought, because I want to hear from both experts, but it sounds like it was that day. Let me go back so we can. I don't know that she said exactly when it was written. Let's see.
Pieces of evidence is when she was sitting in the hospital bed, one of the first things that she wrote to law enforcement, because she could not speak because she had a trach, was, "How long will my prison sentence be for killing her?" This is the evidence that will come before you that demonstrates that she understood the wrongfulness of her actions. Pay attention. She locked the door. She waited until she was isolated. Those are pieces of evidence that will come before you that are important. The next thing I would like you to pay attention to in the presentation of evidence is why she killed Hannah.
Okay.
There will be evidence about why she killed Hannah. Pay very, very close attention to what motivated her actions. He didn't do it, I did it. I was going insane and no longer wanted to be with his friends, but kept coming back for him. I only wanted my baby and husband, but he refused. The evidence will be she wanted him. She wanted to be with him.
That's where I was wondering if she was jealous of his new relationships, especially if the most recent relationship was under a year. Because I wonder if when she got with him, if she knew she was entering a polygamous situation, that he would have multiple wives. That was one of the first things that I personally thought in hearing this.
She was the first of this group of 3 wives, and the 2 others came after her. The evidence will be clear that she wanted to be with him, and he was never going to give up this polygamous cult lifestyle that they had adopted. This was one of the first writings that she made about why she killed Hannah. Pay attention to the why. Her cell phone was searched, and you'll see evidence of that. She searched killing somebody to save them. Also, a couple of weeks before she killed Hannah, she searched how to snap a neck. The evidence.
So that's not a in the moment passion of like, I lost it in that moment thing. Okay.
Is going to be, she was evaluated in the hospital by a psychiatrist shortly after she killed Hannah, and he indicated patient felt the only way out was to kill her daughter and herself. I couldn't handle being with the group anymore, and he left no alternative with certain threats. This was her note that she wrote to Benjamin. She wanted him and the baby, and she wanted everybody else to go. And that wasn't an option, so she picked a different one. There is going to be evidence in this case that she believed some things that were pretty crazy. And there's that word again, crazy. It doesn't have a legal definition. You're going to be focused more on mental illness and insanity and making your determination. But just in the English language context, there's going to be evidence that comes before you that sounds insane. There is going to be evidence that she believed things that the rest of the group believed too. That the world is fake, that we're living in hell, that they have the ability to, with their minds, control the actions of other people around them. These things were not unique to Chloe Driver. The entire group believed that this higher level of consciousness was something that they were called upon to do, to serve the world. And so what I ask you to do when you are assessing these things is, there may be a question about whether these are delusions or whether these are just genuinely held religious views that maybe are untraditional that the rest of the world doesn't agree with. And that's something that you're going to have to parse out. But here's the thing that is very, very clear and will be very important to your determination in this case. None of these bizarre views had anything to do with Hannah. That is of critical importance. I started with a picture of Hannah, and I'm going back to it because when we talk about the issue of insanity that will be raised in this case, you have to focus on how her belief system, her mind, her thoughts, how those things related to Hannah, her feelings about Hannah, the reason she committed the act against Hannah. You cannot just say she has crazy beliefs without considering Hannah. So in this case, what you will hear and what the evidence will show is not a single witness, not a single doctor that evaluated her, not a single statement Chloe Driver has ever made was that Hannah believed, or she believed Hannah was any kind of a threat to her. There will be no evidence of that. You will not hear that she was ever afraid of Hannah. You will not hear that she ever felt like she needed to defend herself against Hannah. And how she felt about Hannah in her mind and in her actions and informing her intent is something that you need to pay attention to in this case. It will help you solve the legal equation. Whether she had delusions or not is a teeny tiny part of the legal equation you will solve. The evidence that will come before you is none of that stuff related to the reasons why she committed this act against Hannah or her beliefs about Hannah, the baby, the victim in this case. You are going to have to evaluate the evidence that comes before you about whether any of her belief systems were manifestations of mental illness and how that related to the act that she committed. And what the evidence is going to be is that any manifestations of mental illness were completely separate from the motivations for why she killed Hannah. The evidence is going to be that her motivation for why she killed Hannah wasn't her delusions, it was her reality. The evidence is going to be that she couldn't decide if she wanted to stay or go, so she picked a third option. And the evidence is going to show that that wasn't delusional at all. That was very reasonable thinking based upon the situation she willfully put herself in. I suspect in this case, there's going to be a lot of effort to paint Chloe Driver as the victim instead of this baby girl. You are going to hear that she was held against her will. She didn't feel like she was free to leave. But the evidence is going to demonstrate that that is not true. The evidence is going to demonstrate that as she sat there and stabbed Hannah to death, she had a diaper bag with her personal effects in it, and inside that diaper bag was a cell phone, $1,000 cash, blank checks in the name of Chloe Alexis Driver that connected to a bank account in the name of Chloe Alexis Driver that had $65,000 in it.
Ooh. Ooh, that's I've never had a bank account with 65,000, but I have student loans. And Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's gonna be tough. That's gonna be tough. Um, to me, and I don't know when they show a picture of her daughter, and she's supposed to manage her emotions and everything. She looks mad, but I'm sure she's not liking what the prosecutor is saying right now. I'm sure. I'm sure. Like that is she had a way out. She did. Was this an act that was against him? Wow, that's ooh. And I'm gonna listen to the defense too. Like I said, minds aren't closed, but that's wow.
She had the means to leave. The evidence is going to be she didn't want to. She wanted him. She had supportive parents who she had seen the day before she murdered Hannah.
Okay.
And instead, she chose to go
Okay, so she had connection with family. So she did. So there were okay, wow.
with the group. That is what the evidence is going to be. The evidence will not be that she was held against her will. The evidence will be that she exercised her free will in wanting to be with Benjamin. The evidence will be that at every opportunity, she took the opportunity to maintain her relationship with him, even after she murdered Hannah. The evidence will be that she wanted to have her cake and eat it too. Even after she was arrested and charged with murder, the evidence that will come before you is that she was simultaneously talking to doctors, speaking to lawyers, evaluating her options for a defense in this case, telling them that she was an oppressed victim of this religious cult to shirk responsibility for her criminal actions and placing the blame on Benjamin, saying all those things to the doctors and professionals that were evaluating her, while simultaneously continuing to maintain conversations with him, continuing to maintain a relationship with him, making hundreds of phone calls to him and telling him how much she loved him. Phone calls that she placed out. He could not call her. The evidence will not be that she could not exercise free will. The evidence will be that she wanted to be with him. What you are going to hear is probably that this cult lifestyle wasn't great for her mental health.
Yeah.
But that is not the issue before you in this case. The evidence is going to be that Chloe Driver was swimming in the pond she jumped in. And she did it willfully.
It sounds like a capital MS situation. Like it sounds like she was trying to it reminds me, so trigger warning for unaliving. So there was a recent situation. A woman went to a specific bridge and jumped off with her 9-year-old and her infant child. And that is so that's where I talk about there's 988 in the United States. There are hotlines. If people are struggling with their mental health, if they are struggling with depression, and they did not survive. And in that situation, the 9-year-old probably knew what was gonna happen, and her mom, I think, made or something happened because the 9-year-old went too. And, that is really, really tragic. And so, um, uh, yeah, I don't know if they're gonna talk about the finances of the group, like how the group ended up making that much money. I don't know if they had a YouTube channel or something like that. Like, when I and it broke my heart, because the mom was so it would break my heart for any race or ethnicity, um, but back when I was learning about depression, normally, like, African Americans had spirituality, had certain things as protective factors, and when I was trained so I was trained back from 2005 to 2009. I was trained that older white males were the ones that were the highest risk of unaliving themselves, and those stats have changed drastically. Right now, the highest rates are really young people, and so that's really, really, so, like, if children are making certain statements, please seek help. And then also that, African American, that race is no longer a protective factor for those types of situations or those types of thoughts. And, wow. And then Zoe is talking about this case. Looks like the husband and Sarah Stiles have been in connect oh, I don't know. Okay. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. And so really it's from age 10 to like 23, 24. Those are the highest rates right now. I think it's the first or second leading cause. I think it might be the second. It's the first or second leading cause of death in individuals 10 to 23. And I did a video talking about mental health in kids and that mental health crisis. Yeah, and so it's become, so it used to be more rare. In our area, we've had multiple losses, like it multiple for the school district. It's a school district that had 14 middle and high schools, and it got to the point where they put a social worker in every single school, in every single school. And so please, like, if kids are making certain statements, please do, take those seriously, get them help, um, because sometimes a 10-year-old doesn't understand the finality of death. So they don't like, it's normally around 12, 13 where they start to understand that concept. And so, I like to kids that I work with that are under the age of 12 that have those kinds of thoughts, I talk with them about, like, it's not a video game. Like, we're not gonna just respawn. Like, this is serious stuff. And so, making sure to have those conversations. Now, one of the biggest thing, um and so it was already kind of increasing but COVID really messed a lot of things up because for some kids, school was their safe place. And then some kids were then at home. So there was an increase in child harm during COVID. There was, I heard horrific stories about, so there were some kids that, so when kids go to school, the teachers have an eye on them and they notice, oh, this child is showing up to school dirty every day. Like they never have food. Like let's do a welfare check on this child. When kids weren't in school, there were situations that went unnoticed that people didn't find out about. And so it really is sad. We are going to keep going. Let me know if y'all have questions as we're listening to this.
It was the air that she breathed. And she chose that even after she took the life of Hannah Nicole Driver. You will not hear that she was deprived of free will. You will see that she exercised her free will. And the person that suffered the consequences of her choices was Hannah, not Chloe. The evidence will be clear that Chloe murdered Hannah. She did it willfully, she did it intentionally, and she wanted her to die. The evidence will also demonstrate maybe that Chloe was a weak-minded person who was particularly susceptible to the cult lifestyle. But that is
I don't love it being stated like that, but that's just the psychologist in me. To call her weak, I don't, because a person with a strong mind can get love bombed and fall into a cult. And I think she might have been 17. She might have been 16 or 17 when she came into contact with all of this. So I don't love that phrasing, but that's the psychologist in me.
not the issue before you. The evidence will not demonstrate that she meets the definition of criminal insanity to the extent that she cannot be held responsible for her actions. And once all of the evidence has come before you and all of the witnesses have been questioned, I'm going to ask you to hold her responsible for the consequences that this child suffered from her choices and her decisions. And I'm going to ask you to find her guilty.
All right, Ms. Trethewey.
Good morning. I want to make one thing abundantly clear from the outset of this case, and that no one in this courtroom is going to stand here and dispute that the murder of a child is a horrific event. This is a tragic and heartbreaking case. There's simply no other way to explain it. There's no rational way to explain that. There is no dispute as to the facts regarding the events that occurred on December 8th of 2020 at 215 Mountain Vista Boulevard here in Canton. Ms. Driver does not dispute that she killed her 13-month-old baby daughter, Hannah Nicole Driver. There is also no dispute that at the same time, Ms. Driver stabbed herself repeatedly in the neck, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times, and then took the knife to her chest. There is no doubt that the evidence in this case and the testimony you're going to hear by the state of the defendant will not only be difficult to see and hear, but as we go through this trial, the only issue in this case that you need to decide is Ms. Driver's mental status and mental state at the time of the crime. Solely focus as we sit here and present all of this evidence about what happened that day, and the state does that, on her mental health. We are not standing here saying that Hannah Nicole Driver is not a victim. That is not the position taken by anybody in this case. Our job is to simply show you how we got here today, and that the law allows you to consider her mental state at the time of the crime. I'm going to give you a little bit more background information about the people involved in this case so you have some sort of context. Today, our client, Chloe, she's 24 years old. She grew up in Florida and in the Knoxville, Tennessee area. Her parents are Eric and Renee Driver. She is one of 3 children, the youngest and only daughter. Ms. Driver did have her ups and downs and bouts with teenage angst, and she, like most teenagers, thought she was ready for the world and knew best at the age of 16. She left home, she left school, she had her first fateful meeting with Benjamin Ben Michael when she was 16 years old at a bus station in Atlanta. Several months after the breaking up with her boyfriend, she had just turned 17, she met up with Benjamin again. He was 38 years old. See,
Okay. She's 17, he's 38. Yeah. And that's why I tell kids, teens that I work with, when an older person, somebody that's more than 2, 3 years older than you, if they're interested in you, it's often about manipulation and control, in my opinion. Because what's a 30-something-year-old man like? Why did she's 17? They have completely different life experiences. No, that's my thoughts.
I'll tell you a little bit about Mr. Benjamin Ben Michael. He's not this great character that the state intends to put up here. Not at all. He spends his free time setting up Christian trusts in the name of religion and his wacky beliefs. You will hear that some of these trusts include contracts that he made with his so-called wives. I'm not even going to attempt to try to explain what these trusts are, because quite frankly, we really don't understand what their thought process is involved in that, and I'm sure Mr. Stillers would love to tell you all about it. You will hear that he had 3 wives at this time. He had Jessica, he had Chloe, he had Sarah. He actually knew Jessica prior to ever meeting Chloe. But Chloe was his first wife, and Jessica came back into the picture at a later time because she had money. She had some money stashed away, and Mr. Ben Michael knew that. Sarah Stiles did come along longer. She wasn't involved in this group until after Chloe had had her baby. See, he creates contracts with each one of these women and calls them his wives in trust. You will also hear evidence that Benjamin had not only Chloe, but these other wives file during COVID for the fraudulent EIDL loan money through the Small Business Administration. He had each one of them apply for these under his Alorian Christian Trust or other pseudo trusts that he called 501c3 or 508c something under the organization of spirituality and teaching. You will hear that they were able to get $150,000 fraudulently. That's the money sitting in the Wells Fargo account. They traveled all around.
So her lawyer is telling a very clear story. I think her lawyer is doing a good job defending her. We always know, so I hold space, so please know the defense lawyer is supposed to do their job, okay? And somebody mentioned that Scientology, and you were the one that recommended this case. Thank you for recommending this case, because I had not heard about this at all. And it makes sense that they tried to use this religious status to be a nonprofit. So a not-for-profit, religious organizations can be tax exempt. And so it sounds like he not only did some things to possibly inappropriately get access to money, but then also was looking to avoid paying taxes too. So I was wondering where that 60-something thousand came from, and now we know exactly where that came from.
In the eastern United States, sometimes they were together, sometimes they were not, depending on where he wanted each of these women. They definitely lived what we would consider an alternative lifestyle. This lifestyle didn't involve the things that you and I would normally think would be a partnership or a relationship, or the type of rules that we would necessarily agree with. There were rules of what to eat, what to wear, who they could talk to, when she would have access to her cell phone, when she'd be able to speak to her parents. Same rules applied to all 3 women. It was a constant indoctrination of an alternative ideology and belief system to an already vulnerable young lady. A 17, 18, and 19-year-old woman with a 38, 39, 40-year-old man. He did assign his wives each alternative name. She'll hear in these calls and interviews, they'll refer to her as Kalani. Chloe, initially, was all in this relationship. She really didn't know any better. She was shocked and awed by his personality. She was young, and she was vulnerable. She became alienated from her friends and her family, and she did. She followed his teachings and belief system. He also manipulated her mind to the extent about her own belief system, about her own parents. Repeatedly telling her he couldn't trust, that she could not trust her parents and that they may have done horrible things to her as a child. She couldn't and did not realize that this was essentially a cult environment. Around April of 2020, Benjamin met Jason Spillers, and they immediately became friends. He became fascinated with his trust system, the idea of having multiple women involved, quickly realized that they shared similar beliefs. To this day, they remain very close to each other. Mr. Spillers traveled around as well from place to place and was in a group on several different occasions with them, leading up to December 8th. When he was not with Benjamin or this group, he remained in constant contact via phone, text, or other means. Mr. Spillers saw Chloe in May of 2020. We'll describe her as a loving, caring mom. No issues, no signs of mental illness. In September of 2020, he noted that her mental state had deteriorated and became concerned. We even spoke to Brian about it. There were discussions about her needing treatment and medication. But see, Mr. Ben Michael doesn't agree with pharmaceuticals. He doesn't believe with white coat intervention, as he calls it.
He was not going to let her put any medication in her body because she was breastfeeding, and she needed to be pure. He also believed that he could self-diagnose and self-treat Chloe on his own. Now, there were several red flags and calls for help leading up to this event, and the state didn't tell you about it, but I'm going to. Several people who claim to love Chloe and care about her are the same people who refused to get her the help she desperately needed and asked for. Benjamin, his other wives, Jason Spillers, Chloe's own parents. They either all chose not to help her and ignored her cries for help, or they just could not break through to her in those fateful months and get her that help she so desperately needed that she asked for. The responses to her erratic behavior, her expressions of the thoughts that were in her mind to these people were ignored. Rather, in September of 2020, instead of getting her actual mental help, Benjamin convinced her to start taking CBD to help regulate herself and calm her down. You will hear testimony that they continued to feed her this CBD from Mr. Spillers that not only increased the erratic behavior, but led to an increase in her delusions and the continued degradation of her condition. There were two significant incidents that I want you to think about through this trial that show a continued decline of her mental health leading up to this and the lack of help for her deteriorating mental state. On November 25th, 2020, this group was in Asheville, North Carolina. Chloe Driver ran out of an apartment through an apartment complex parking lot into oncoming traffic to escape this group. She was having a major mental health crisis episode. During that time, she was begging strangers to help her get away from him and get help. She was yelling, she was crazy. I expect you to hear from a lady named Sandra Torres. She is a completely independent witness, doesn't know Benjamin.
And so this group did not believe in drugs. So they were drug and alcohol free. They only drank purified water. They were vegan. And so CBD is the part that, so I'm not a medical doctor, so this isn't medical advice, just sharing in general. Oh, I used, okay. I thought I had some CBD oil up here, but I think I already took it downstairs. But CBD, it takes out the THC, like it's the calming effect without the THC, which is the part that gets people high. And so CBD oil in some states, but some people don't have. So if she was already kind of psychotic, so I am wondering if she was having some mental health problems. Just because somebody has a mental health problem does not mean that they will be found not guilty by reason, or that so just because they have a mental health problem doesn't mean that they're legally insane. That will be up for the jury. Okay, so Georgia, and it sounds like they were so they weren't even living in Georgia. So I think they were coming from North Carolina to Florida. So they just stopped in Georgia. They did not live in Georgia. Yeah. I think there might be some THC but like, yeah, but the whole point of CBD is that it's the part that just helps with reducing inflammation, increasing relaxation, those types of things. Um, my husband has chronic pain, and it's helpful for him. His doctor knows that he uses CBD. I use CBD when if I'm having insomnia, or like if we're, when we go to Disney and we're walking 20,000-30,000 steps a day. So it's helpful for me. If I have clients who are on chemotherapy, and if they're experiencing nausea, sometimes, but they talk with their medical doctor. They talk about them. And for some people, it can help with anxiety. For some people, it makes it worse. And so that's where each person has to determine like what works best for them. And so, yeah. All right. I just wanted to clear that part up.
Doesn't know Jason, doesn't know Chloe, who saw this young lady on that day in the middle of the road, crying and asking for help, being chased by Jason Spillers. She sees him pick her up and drag her back into that apartment. She calls 911. And what is the result of her help? She was hit by a car that Ben Yaman was driving and punched in the eye by Jason Spillers. He broke her eye socket. She will tell you that Chloe was begging for help, begging to call the police, begging them to call her parents to help. These men put Chloe in a car, put Hannah in a car, and drove away before the police could ever respond. There are police reports about this. You will hear that the next day, Thanksgiving of 2020, November 26th, that Chloe had access to her cell phone. She contacted her parents to please come and get her in Asheville, North Carolina with Hannah and help her get away. That Brian was hurting her, she was afraid, she needed help. Her parents immediately got in the car and started to make that 2-hour drive to Asheville. Benjamin went through her phone, found out that they were coming, and the result was he took the child before her parents or the police.
Okay. So I'm guessing her parents are probably going to testify to this. But if somebody is making plans to leave, make sure to delete the messages. Now, don't do crimes. I think, is this one it? Is this? I forget which one it is. Yes. Let me see. Y'all know me? Nope, that's the wrong one. This is the one. Don't do crimes. Just don't do crimes. Okay. So if somebody is planning to leave, there are make sure to delete messages, like talk in code, and make sure to do it unannounced, and try to do it maybe like if she knew he was going to be away or something, like make sure to do things safely, because that is often the most dangerous time for a person. I am going to be watching. There is a case. I just saw the coverage on Law and Crime earlier today of a woman who, instead of getting a divorce with her mother and brother, she allegedly planned the unaliving of her husband. And I think she's a mom. I think she has 3 kids, and she was specifically researching the Adelsons and her name is Kate Restelli. So it's Restelli. That Law and Crime has a recent video on it. It's sounding a lot like the Adelson case. She is going to be arrested because she left a long record of digital evidence, texting. Like they were not talking in code. They were talking exactly about what was happening. She had made all types of comments. So this is not sponsored. He uses level select CBD. I will share this screen. Everybody can find the one that works, and it is expensive, but my husband researched it, and this was the one that he found and that he liked. They have different versions. We do the drops one. They do have gummies. They have other options. Once again, not an ad. I get nothing for saying it. Oopsie, not default. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Oh, it keeps sorry. Wait a minute. I want to share this tab instead. There we go. I pushed the wrong button. All right. So yeah, he's a literal rocket scientist. So my husband is an aerospace engineer, and that is what he uses. All right.
Took the child away from Chloe and kept her away from her child for over 2.5 days. Police reported about that too. When her parents picked her up that day, Miss Driver had a black eye, the remnants of a healing black eye. It's documented in a police report as well. Chloe went with her parents. She was distraught. She was upset. She was afraid that she was never going to see her daughter again. He kept her away from the baby. Expect you to see the Facebook messages and text messages exchanged between the two that indicate the manipulation of the games he played with Chloe that day and over the course of those 2 days to get her child back. She was even more distraught because she was still breastfeeding her daughter. That was the first time that her parents had ever learned about what was going on with Chloe, both with her mental status and the relationship. Her parents were desperate to intervene. They helped her try to figure out how to get her own bank account, how to obtain Hannah's birth certificate, because they left the hospital shortly after she was born, because Mr. Ben Michael didn't want her in the system and was afraid that DFACS was going to be called. They left without a birth certificate. She feared that she would never see her daughter again. I expect you'll see a video that was taken on November 27th of 2020 with Miss Driver. That video was taken prior to Miss Driver getting in an Uber that Mr. Ben Michael set for her to bring her back to her child. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know what was going to happen to her. She didn't actually know she was being brought to her daughter. You will see the choice and the agony in Miss Driver's voice that she had to go back to get her daughter. She feared never seeing her again. You will hear evidence, and the state's already touched on it, about evidence about searches. Miss Driver did search for other things other than how to snap a neck. She did searches that were trying to, how to find a bus ticket for a 13-month-old.
So when they said DFACS, I think they mean DFCS. Oh, okay. So I was thinking they might have meant Department of Family and Child Services. That's what I thought. Sometimes different people, so like we say DSS in Virginia, DFAC. I wonder if it means Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services. That's what I wonder if it means. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong.
How do I travel with a child I don't have a birth certificate to? There are also indications that she was understanding that she was experiencing some crazy things in her mind. She searched for schizophrenia. She searched for other ways to get mental help. Things that she was being denied. And things spiraled from there. On December 7th, 2020, the group took Chloe back to her parents' house to get the last of her belongings. They begged her to stay there with Hannah. They couldn't convince her to stay, and her parents thought about calling the police. But they also realized that that might mean that they may never see their daughter or granddaughter again. And they are still living with that guilt today. The group then left and spent the night in a hotel room. The morning of the 8th, they attended a ceremony called the 12 Tribes. They then traveled towards Canton, Georgia. I expect that Mr. Stillers will tell you about a weird incident where...
Okay, so I'm just going to pause. So they probably called Child Protective Services. So that this probably is CPS as Child Protective Services, but the overall organization. So in Virginia, we say DSS. It's Division of Social Services or Department of Social Services. We normally say DSS. They say DFCS in Georgia, which is Department of Family and Children's Services. That's what they say, but that's the overall department. And then CPS is normally within that department.
They appeared to be hallucinating or having something going on while they were at Whole Foods on the way down here. They did stop at Mr. Adams' house to pick up some belongings that belonged to Benjamin. Chloe was in Canton for less than 3 hours that day. Throughout this case, you will hear evidence that everyone around her said, well, Chloe wholeheartedly and loved and cared for her child. You'll hear evidence that she was a loving and doting mother, that she tended to all of Hannah's needs, that that baby barely ever cried because of the love and attention that Chloe's. So you will hear that Chloe considered her an extension of herself, a huge piece of her, had a connection to her. That everything she did for her daughter was because she was an incredible mother. And I'm going to show you some pictures, put this kind of in context for you guys, so that you can see the physical changes involved in Chloe's life during this time. These pictures do not dispute a change in her physically and show a change in her mentally. This is Chloe when she was 16 years old, before she met Benjamin Ben Michael. This is Chloe with Hannah on July 12th, 2020. Her pride and joy. August 29th, 2020. Again, showing how prideful she is of her God. November 2020.
It's okay.
November 27th, 2020.
I was hoping we would see them. I don't think we will. It's okay.
It's another angle from November 27th. Now, the state has charged Chloe with killing Hannah with malice and cruel intentions, and along with other counts set forth in the indictment. The evidence in this case, contrary to what the state is saying, is clear and overwhelming. The state doesn't want you to consider Chloe a victim of Benjamin or Jason Spiller. We're not even standing here saying that that is a full piece of what happened. We're not blaming Jason. We're not blaming Benjamin. We're not blaming Hannah. But what it is a bigger piece of this puzzle about Chloe's severe and untreated mental illnesses that she suffered in the months leading up to December 8th. You will also hear testimony that she did have these delusions, that she seemed paranoid, that she reported seeing signs of things that to you and I wouldn't be read that way. That that's all part of mental illness. We are not here to dispute what happened to Hannah. It is truly horrific. It is something that Ms. Driver thinks about every single day. You will hear evidence from witnesses who were with her leading up to this that contradict every aspect that on December 8th of 2020 that Chloe was in any right state of mind at all. You will hear testimony from those individuals who witnessed her day-to-day mental health breakdowns and delusions themselves. You will also hear testimony about how this investigation by the Canton Police Department was conducted from the very beginning as it related to her severe mental illness and her delusions. Ms. Driver was evaluated by several experts in this case, which will be presented to you in this case, including one from the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health. We expect that the evidence will show that every expert that comes before you will say that she was severely mentally ill, that she was delusional.
But was she legally insane? That's the question. That's the legal question.
And will offer diagnoses of specific mental health disorders. You will hear from experts that will tell you that she was suffering from these severe mental disturbances, paranoia, and psychosis on December 8th and in the months leading up to the tragic event. They will tell you that they based their information on information they received from the state, from the defense, and from other collateral third parties. They will also tell you that the participation in this group, while initially may have been voluntary, turned into one of an involuntary nature from a psychological perspective.
So the defense is only going to have an expert come forward that is helpful for the defense. So if the defense has two experts evaluate the person and one expert says, yes, they were insane, the other expert says, no, they weren't, often the defense will call the one that says yes. And then the state may, like if they, like, because the state often knows who, but like if they're, I don't know, but like, or the state may have their own expert go in and do an evaluation. Sometimes the court orders an evaluation. So it's not the state or the defense, but whoever calls the person is going to be the one that is having information presented that supports their case.
The state is aiming to present this case in such a deliberate manner aimed at eliciting raw emotional responses to what happened. That's it. They want you to ignore the elephant in the room, which is the mental health, which is a huge piece of this puzzle. Despite those initial reactions, we are asking you to think about this. Mothers just do not kill their kids. Ask yourself, what drives someone to do something like this to their baby and to themselves? What drives someone to do something like this who by all reports loved and cared for Hannah in the most amazing way? Listen to the evidence that is presented about what she experienced in this relationship with Benjamin and what delusions compelled her to this tragic event. Listen to what people say about her ability to know what she was doing, living minute to minute, how she'd be fine one minute, and the next thing they would describe her as erratic and crazy. There is
child essay is really common in cults. The medical examiner would know if anything had happened to the child. And the most severe cases of dissociative identity disorder that I've seen, it was when there was cult like child ritualistic essay. Like those have been some of the worst cases that I've seen. Often very, and there's no evidence that there was any harm to Hannah. There was absolutely there was no evidence of that. It does sound like Hannah wanted to leave. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to leave with her daughter. I think he would have let her go, but I don't think that that he would have let her take Hannah with her. He likely viewed that contract. He likely viewed them as his property. He likely has some narcissistic features. The best cult leaders are narcissists, often have psychopathic type traits. Sometimes they do have some charisma because that's how they get people to join. That's how they get people in. But then and sometimes the wives turn on each other, where the wives can report on one another and they gain favor with the leader by doing those things. And so yes, Hannah was the child. I hope that's been clear in everything that I've said. But they often, but that charisma is more like love bombing. So at first it's, oh my gosh, you're the worst thing ever, and then the verbal harm comes. Like once they have you hooked, once you're in, then the harm starts. It does sound like there might have been some DV in the relationship. Um, and yeah, and so we'll keep going.
absolutely no motive in this case for her to kill her daughter. There is no other reason for her to have killed Hannah but for her psychotic symptoms and delusions that she was under on December 8th of 2020. You'll hear that from experts, but you'll hear that from the witnesses too. This is the only explanation as to what happened, and the only reason that would be supported by the evidence in this case. We believe that the evidence in this case will clearly lead you to a conclusion that at the end of this case, that she's not guilty by reason of insanity. And
And that still, because it's provided by law, is a way to hold her responsible for these actions. We expect that that's what the evidence will show, and that will be what we will be asking for you at the end of this case. Thank you.
All right, you can go ahead and distribute the notepads and pencils, but we are going to take a recess.
Okay. So y'all, the court is going to take a recess. I have been streaming for almost 2 hours. I need to take a short potty break. So I will be back in just a moment. So let me take a quick potty break, and it probably be like less than 2 minutes. Probably 5, because you got to, so probably like 5 minutes. So let's take a quick break. I will be right back. Oy. Y'all probably heard that. The sound was probably still connected. We fix my mic. All right. Ah, all right. So we will keep it going. So now we're going to skip the court break. Let me know if y'all have questions. They're about to call the first witness. So the state is calling their first witness.
Gropper, call your first witness, please.
Kayla McNeely.
Ma'am, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can have a seat. Can you state your name?
Scale McNeely.
Okay.
At the time, Scale was there.
Okay. Your former name was different?
Yes.
Okay. And how are you employed?
Okay, so this is going to be the 911 dispatcher. So be prepared. If they play the 911 call, that's probably going to be emotional. Okay. And I really do adore y'all. I really do. I like watching this with you all. I told y'all my husband, he doesn't watch true crime. And so I get to talk with y'all about these things, or all of this would just be in my mind with nowhere to go. So let's keep it going.
I'm currently with a marketing company. At the time, I was a 911 dispatcher.
Okay. So when you say at the time, back in December of 2020, what was your employment?
I was a communications officer at Cherokee County 911.
Okay. And what was your primary responsibility in that role?
In this role, I was a call taker and dispatcher working with the 7 agencies that Cherokee County dispatches for.
Okay. And so if somebody in Cherokee County dialed 911, you're somebody that would respond to the call?
Correct.
All right. And we're going to get into the actual calls in question in this case, but I want to ask you a little bit about whether you had the opportunity to review sort of the records that relate to this case.
I did.
Okay, and are you familiar with how many 911 calls were placed?
I believe there was 2. There might have been more, but I can't be sure on more than 2.
Okay, and what was the, do you recall the incident location?
I do.
And what was that?
I believe it was in Canton, 215. Can't remember the street name, but
Okay.
it was in Canton.
All right, and you said that you know that there were 2. What can you tell the jury about when multiple phone calls come in from the same location, how your system communicates with
Sure.
each other?
Yeah, so we are all in the same room. There's about 8 of us, and we all have the opportunity to press answer. So anybody can be on a call at any given time. When this call came in, I was the second one, so we both pressed answer, and both of us picked up the call at the same time.
Okay, and how does the system or your dispatchers, how do they know that 2 different calls are related to the same incident?
So when the first dispatcher took the call, so I was the dispatcher and the call taker for this case. When the first call taker took the call, got the address, put in very little information and sent it to me, where I opened the call, I could see the address, the incident, and like the cross street, the caller, those kinds of things.
Okay, and then when you took this particular call, did you become aware that there was a secondary call happening simultaneously?
Yes,
Okay.
so it pops up and you can see information live as it comes in.
Okay, and so while you were taking the call in question in this case, were you also receiving information that was being provided by a second caller?
Yes,
Are you familiar with who the other dispatcher was?
Yes.
And who was that?
it's Paul McGinnett.
All right. And Your Honor, at this time, I would tender States Exhibit 1 and 2, which are the 2 911 calls. I believe the defense is stipulating the authenticity.
We are. No objections.
States 1 and 2 are admitted.
All right. Your Honor, I'd like to publish these calls.
Go ahead.
All right. Going to start with States Exhibit 1.
Cherokee County 911, location of your emergency.
One of them has 215. 15 Mount Vista Boulevard. 215 Mount Vista Boulevard.
215 Mount Vista Boulevard?
Yes.
What does that run off of?
What is that run off of? Houston. Yes. Canton, Georgia.
Okay. I know the city you're in. What's the closest intersection to you?
What's the closest
The main road that you take?
140. 140?
What's going on?
Highway 140. I think there's a baby that just died, and I think there was a woman responsible for it, and can you please have any of those come here?
You think a baby died? What?
I believe so. Is it 215? Is it 215?
Give me 1 second.
215.
What's your name?
My name is Jessica.
Okay, Jessica, how are you related to that?
They're my friends.
Where's the baby at?
I was muted the whole time. So, what I was trying to say is that this was Jessica, wife number 2, and that in polygamy, they often will not tell that they are a sister wife. That's where she said that that it was a friend, and she didn't say that it was her sister wife, or yeah. Wow.
I'm scared. I'm scared. I don't know how to go.
The baby is breathing.
Okay.
Jessica, what's the mother's name?
and she made sure to give her legal name because they have other names within there 'cause, Chloe also goes by a different name, but, Jessica is giving her legal name.
Chloe.
Mother's name is Chloe.
Yeah.
How old is the baby?
I don't know.
Okay, what's your phone number?
757 392. There is one.
I wanna cut out
So
the
what's
phone
going
number.
on with the baby?
Hold on, let me see.
Jessica, I need you to tell me what's going on. Jessica,
Is she breathing? Is she breathing? I don't know if she's breathing.
where is Anaya?
So they ended up pronouncing the baby at the hospital. I've seen it happen where they don't pronounce, like they have a doctor pronounce, unless they get there and the individual is clearly like unless it's pretty clear because it does sound like they attempted life-saving measures. They took the baby to the hospital and they pronounced the baby there. But this is so sad.
I don't know. I think it's upstairs.
Okay, where is the mother at?
I believe upstairs.
Where's the baby?
I believe upstairs as well.
The mother is with the
I'm
baby?
so sorry. Yes.
Is there anybody else there with them?
Yes, the father and another friend.
I don't know what's going on. I need you to tell me what's going on. And if you're not giving me any information, can you go tell me how the baby is doing?
I don't believe she's breathing.
You don't believe she's breathing?
I don't believe
Do you know what happened?
I'm not sure. I think that she was split across the throat. I
You
believe.
split across the throat?
I believe so.
Did you know why?
I do not know why. I'm sorry. You have that question.
I'm still here. Okay. Can you tell me what the mom looks like? Can you tell me her last name?
Her last name is Driver, B.R.I.V. Victor, E.R. She has brown hair, blue eyes, brown hair, and brown eyes.
What is she wearing?
I do not know. I think she's wearing a sweatshirt, a Hogwarts sweatshirt, and purple pants.
Okay, give me one sec. Okay, do you see an officer?
No, not yet.
Have you seen the baby since you've been there?
No, just before the mother went in, no.
Okay.
So right now, 911 is just trying to keep her on the line and keep her talking and get as much because she's not giving her any information. And I don't blame Jessica for not. It sounds like Jessica didn't want to go into the room. Jessica probably didn't want to see what was happening. Oh wow, Zoe, because you're saying that she was okay, that she's supposedly right there. Wow. 'Cause you can hear her talking to people in the background, and you could hear the father scream like, you could hear him a little at the beginning, so it would make sense if she was upstairs with them. That would make sense. But it sounds like she's holding back information. And I wonder if they're holding. I don't know why. That's
Are you outside, Jessica? The ambulance? No, I'm going upstairs. What? Yeah, I'm calling an ambulance. I don't know if there's somebody else on the phone. Okay, we have somebody coming.
Now, I don't want you to hang up until you're with an officer, okay?
She says she doesn't want me to hang up until there's an officer.
Yes, what is Chloe doing?
I don't know. Go open the door.
Where is the baby's dad at? What's his name?
It's already open. He's here. He's here.
All right, I'll let you know. Can I let him in? His door? Let him in the door.
She's upstairs.
so. It sounds like 911 kept. So she didn't hang up the phone yet.
Okay, an officer is here. So, let me help you.
Ms. McNeely, at some point in that call, you said, where is the knife before
Yes.
she had said anything about there being a knife. Can you explain that?
Yes, so I remember correctly, the very first thing that was sent to me as a dispatcher was mother 48'd her baby with a knife. The 48 is a signal that we use to indicate death. So it would have read mother killed her baby with a knife.
Okay.
So that
So
was the
that-
first information that I had.
All right. So when you took the call, that was the preliminary information you were provided.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I want to publish State's Exhibit number 2.
All right, go ahead.
Cherokee County 911, patient giver. What's the location? What's the address?
We already know the address. We already know it. They're trying to hide that.
How did you kill her baby?
I don't know, a knife? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Do you know who this lady is?
Sorry, just hold on, please.
She still has the knife? She still has the knife?
No, it's across the road, okay?
Okay.
Just please come quickly.
I've got everybody on their way out there, okay? 13-month-old baby?
Oh my God.
Is she breathing?
No, I don't think so. She looks dead. On the cot. I think she's dead. Come quickly, please.
They're coming as fast as they can. What is your name?
My name's Sarah.
Okay, Sarah, what's your last?
Okay, so there were 2 phone calls. So Sarah gave more information. Sarah has been in this group for a shorter period of time. Chloe's been in the group for 3 years. Not Chloe. So Chloe 3 years, Jessica 2 years, and Sarah it's been less than a year. So Sarah's giving a lot more information.
Sarah, I'm sorry. What was your last name?
Not our
Sarah, what's your phone number in case you get disconnected?
Okay. If they are if they are witnesses, because the witnesses are sequestered. So if they are testifying in the case, they aren't allowed to be there. They covered that at the very beginning of court. The witnesses are sequestered. They are not able to watch any other testimony. They are not able to watch the trial. So that might be why the parents aren't there. The same thing happened in some other cases that we covered. Sometimes the parents are on the witness list and they never call them, but they still can't be in the courtroom. But yeah, I don't think she expected to survive this. I don't think Chloe expected to survive. Um, it does sound like a capital M, capital S situation. Um, wow, wow. I think that so it's still muted.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, who is this lady? What is her name? Do you know?
I don't want to give that to you right now. Please come quickly.
So that's where some of the evasive stuff comes in. Why don't you want to give? But this is likely a cult.
They're coming back again. I'm just trying to get as much information from my officers before they get there.
I know. Is she making any noise?
They're coming as fast as they can. Now, where was the baby found at?
In the bedroom. I'm on the
Where at on the body?
on the neck, right across the neck.
Okay, across the neck, like she was the baby's neck.
Yes.
Are you right there near the baby now?
I think there's still life in her.
They're coming as fast as they can, but we're going to try and do something before they get there. I need you to listen to me and do what I'm asking you, okay? I need you to go there where the baby is.
Because so they're trying to do what they can to do any possible life-saving measures until the helpers can get there. And they also want the scene to be secure as well, that there are no weapons, that their workers are walking into a safe situation too.
Is that okay?
Not work, you know what I mean? That the emergency personnel are walking into a safe situation.
Yes.
Okay, are you in there now?
Yes. He's trying to blow air in her mouth.
Okay, is she awake?
I don't believe so. Her eyes are opening.
Is she breathing?
Her eyes are open. And she's still making little noises. Her heart keeps jumping. And she's making little noises. Yes, that's what we see. They're coming. And
Okay, is there
I think they are going to show it to the jury. I personally don't. I'm not going to stream that part. So I will not stream the body cam. If I watch it and if there's something, I always give trigger warnings if I am gonna play something like that. I do plan to cover it on Thursday, and I don't know what they're going to cover on Thursday, but so I will be back covering this on Thursday as well.
is there any serious bleeding?
there's so much blood.
Okay. I'll send the paramedics to help you out, then I'll tell you exactly what to do next, okay? We're gonna have to try and stop this bleeding, okay?
Okay. Yep. We're going to stop the bleeding. Please.
Okay, do not,
Stop the bleeding.
do not remove. I'm gonna tell you how to stop the bleeding with the kids to make sure we do it right. Get a clean, dry cloth or towel and tell me when you have it, okay?
Yes, we got the shirt.
Okay, Sarah, place it directly on the wound and press down through it.
Okay. There's not blood coming out of the wound, but we're going to put the towel on.
Do not lift it up and look underneath it, and without lifting the clean cloth and towel, let me know if the bleeding has stopped.
Okay. Keep the shirt on there, hold it really tight. Okay. Yep. They're coming. They're coming as soon as they can. Keep blowing air into her mouth.
Okay, keep doing that, okay, but you gotta keep that bleeding controlled, all right?
Okay. I think this bleeding stopped for the most part. Okay.
How long ago did this happen? I mean, like right when you called?
Yeah, we were screaming and I was outside. I was screaming, came up for the as far as I know, my last charger was like, maybe 10 minutes ago, if not sooner.
Sarah, are you okay?
Oh, bodily fine, yeah.
Okay, no, I understand. All right. You guys keep doing what you.
I think even the 911 operator, um, everybody just like this is an emotional thing to hear. So please breathe, drink your water. Um, and if this is too much, okay, if this is too much, please take a break, watch something funny. But yeah, this is tough.
Just keep doing what you're doing, okay? You let me know when they're right there with you, all right? The police officer's gonna get there first, and you should have a fire truck or an ambulance right after that.
Okay.
And she does.
I'm here to get to the door.
Yes, please.
So just we're all going to prepare. The 911 operator is about to start. Like I think tears may come. Okay? So we're just okay.
The door's unlocked. Just make sure you don't have anything in your hands for me, okay?
Yes, I just have my phone.
Okay.
Make sure you don't have anything in your hands, but go, make sure the door is open, and when they get here, let them in, okay? I believe there are two of us on the phone with 911 right now. Yeah, they're already coming. It's okay. Yeah. Can you go make sure the door's open now and let them in when they get here?
Who's going down to the door now, Sarah?
Garmy. Can you go to the door, please? Just go open the door. No, downstairs. The garage door, open the garage door when the police get here, let them in. Maybe get Barry.
We're at the house. Yeah, we're at the house with the baby,
Okay,
Sarah.
you here. There's the other police.
Okay, just let me know when they're right there with you, okay?
Hurry on, you let them in. I believe they're coming. Upstairs, come to the stairs here. No, I don't have anything in my hands.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and let you go, Sarah, okay?
No, it's okay, they're coming.
Sarah, the officer's there with you?
Yes.
Sarah?
You want the nice little floor outside them?
Ms. McNeely, when these calls are happening, what information are you communicating to fire, EMS, and law enforcement?
So at the time, I was only working for Canton PD's radio.
Okay.
And I'm relaying everything.
Okay.
From the time that the call is sent to me to the time that they tell me to shut down the radio because they're on scene, which means no traffic unless it's pertaining to that incident. So I handled everything all the way through from beginning to end until shift change.
Okay. So this would have been communicated to Canton PD
Correct.
officers to respond?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Any words? No questions? Okay, we have questions.
In those calls, you were asking questions related to a knife. Was that because you had received that information from your fellow colleague about a knife?
Yes, it was in the call.
Okay. And the reasons you were doing that were to kind of, ascertain what the actual situation was that was going on, correct?
For seeing safety of my officers, yes.
Correct. So the next step of that process was you want to make sure you could advise the officers that were incoming as to what was going on in that house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And after listening to both of those calls today, it's fair to say that neither one of you were not aware, nor your colleague was aware that there actually was a second victim at that house, correct?
We didn't know.
Okay, so no one at any point during those calls had indicated to you that Ms. Driver had also stabbed herself and needed assistance, correct?
No.
Thank you.
All right, you can step down. Any reason?
I just want to clarify. So when she met him at 16, she was dating somebody. So like they crossed paths at a bus station when she was 16, but they never started. She was dating somebody else. When she broke up with that other person, they reconnected when she was 17, and then they started dating. And I don't know if they got legally married or if it was like a cult contract marriage thing. But she was his first like wife. Oh, okay, good. So does my audio sound low? Because I can turn it up if my audio sounds low. I have controls. I can turn it up if it sounds low. I think that was according to the defense. I think the defense was the one because the prosecution did not provide this timeline. Good. Okay, audio good. So the defense was the one that talked about this timeline. And I think it's important for the jury to know this. They don't have a specific name, I don't think. It's just a nomadic cult group that believes like that the earth is not real and like we're living in hell, and but the prosecution is said that, so the defense hasn't said what the beliefs actually are or anything like that. And it's really common because so she was a runaway because at 16 she ran away from home when she was 16 years old. Okay. So she stopped going to school. She ran away from home at 16 years old. And at 17, he was 38 years old. And ugh, okay. And then Jessica, I guess, has money. That's the way the defense talked about it. And then around probably March, because so 2020 is when the crash happened. There was a whole bunch of government money available for legal organizations. So legal 501c3s were able to apply for money to get resource. So like churches, they meant to help sustain churches during the Panini Press, Panini Press, and during that time, they ended up figuring out that so I think he's in federal jail. So because the father is in federal prison right now. And I don't know if it's because of that money stuff, because it sounds like they fraudulently received $150,000 by filling out those applications incorrectly. So they're going to bring on. Okay, we'll keep it going. I think that was the end for
To keep the witness.
Yeah, you're actually excused.
All right, you can be.
Okay, so she is excused from her. We are going to let them call up the next witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Can I have a seat? Can you state your name and spell it?
Gerald Adlin, Adlan.
Okay. And where do you reside?
Not my address.
Just the city and state.
Venice, Florida.
Venice, Florida? Okay. How old are you, Mr. Allen?
59.
And where did you reside prior to living in Venice,
In
Florida?
Canton, Georgia.
All right.
Oh gosh. This happened at his house. Okay? We're just going to prepare ourselves. This happened at his house. Okay? Let's go.
And for what period of time did you live in Canton?
2009 to 2022.
Okay, 2009 to 2022. And where did you reside?
215 Mountain Vista Boulevard.
Okay. Is that here in Cherokee County?
Yes.
All right. And where is that in relation to where we are now? About how far away?
5 miles.
Okay. And that residence, what can you tell me about who lived there, the size of it?
I lived there alone until 2015 when a friend of mine had another friend who needed help, and I offered them to stay, and they stayed for a couple months and then left.
Okay. Let me start with 2020, and then we'll go back a little bit more historically. Who lived in your house on December 8th of 2020?
Me.
Just you. Okay. And what was your employment at that time?
I work for a company called Sharp Spring.
Did you work from home?
Yes.
All right. And on that day, did anybody come to your residence?
Yes.
And who came to your residence?
Brian and another guy. They were picking up some stuff that they left in my basement.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about that. Who is Brian?
He's the friend of a friend who I let stay with me in
All right.
2015.
Do you know his full name?
No.
All right. Does he go by anything other than Brian?
Z.
Okay. What do you call him?
Z.
Z. All right. And so on December 8th of 2020, Brian or Z came to your residence. You said with another guy. Do you know who that was?
Jason, I think.
Jason.
Yeah.
Okay. And was anybody else with them?
There were some girls, and there might have been another guy. I don't really remember.
Okay.
I didn't.
He said girls versus women, but it's okay. I think he means women, but like, so she looks this young at 24. I can imagine she looked younger at 20.
I didn't really pay attention to it.
All right. What were you doing when they came?
I was working. I was actually on a Zoom call with work.
Okay. So you weren't paying a whole lot of attention to who was with them?
Not at all.
And prior to them coming to your house, who had you communicated with about the fact that they were coming?
Just see.
Just Z. Okay. And you mentioned that he was coming to pick up some stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
But like what?
Okay. Why did he have things at your home?
They were transitioning to a new place to live when they left, and they had a lot of stuff that they couldn't bring, so I let them keep it in my basement.
Okay.
I had an unfinished basement with lots of space. It didn't affect me to be there.
All right.
It's clothes and stuff.
Okay. So prior to 2020, how much time had you spent with Z or Brian?
2-3 months.
Okay. And how did you meet him?
Like I said, it was a friend of mine. I saw him on a video, and that's a friend of mine had him on a video, and that's how I got involved or met him.
Okay. When was that?
2015.
2015. Okay. So in 2015, a friend of yours had him on a video, and that's how you became familiar with Brian/Z?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the nature of that video?
I don't really remember, to be honest. I
Okay.
could find it if you need it, but
What do you recall? What sort of forged the connection between you and him?
it was spiritual stuff,
Okay.
consciousness related, nothing, weird.
So we might be the. So I wonder if the beliefs are available on YouTube or something. Uh, it's coming off a little evasive to me. Like it just, now, yeah. And now, granted, so this trial is being streamed. There are cameras. But, and I could not imagine helping out a friend and then there being a capital M attempted S in my house. Like I cannot imagine that. Okay.
Okay. Spiritual and consciousness type video. Was it something on like YouTube or on
Yeah,
the
it's
internet?
on YouTube.
Okay.
It's probably still there.
All right. So you saw that video and then you connected with Brian?
The interviewer who I knew.
Okay. So he was being interviewed by somebody else?
Correct.
Okay. So you connected with him through that interviewer who you knew?
Correct.
Understood. And you believe that was in 2015?
Yes.
Okay. And so after you connected with him in 2015, how did your relationship with him develop?
I had invited them to come, they needed a place to stay. I offered them my house
Okay.
or
And
a room
all right. And do you know when that was?
sometime in 2015.
Okay. And when you say them, who are you referring to?
Z and his girlfriend.
Okay. And do you know who that was?
I think it was Chloe.
Okay. And
But I didn't know her name then.
okay. So how long did he reside in your home?
I think it was around 3 months.
Okay.
I don't really know.
All right. And was that intended to be a temporary situation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And
I wonder if part of the reason He's being a little, I wonder how old she was the first time they came to live at his house for 3 months. I wonder how old she was. Those are just my own personal thoughts, my own personal questions. And no, there's like this is nothing against this individual that's testifying. My brain is just trying to put things together.
How much interaction or observation did you have with them while they lived with you?
Not much.
Not much. Okay. Did you ever see anything that concerned you?
Not at all.
Okay. And what happened that caused them to move out?
I was just sick of having people in my house.
Okay.
It was supposed to be temporary.
Mhm.
Let's make it temporary.
All right. And so was it your decision to have them leave?
Yes.
Okay. And was there any issue or dispute about that?
Not at all.
So how much communication did you have with Z after he moved out of your residence in 2015?
Get some water. Okay. Could you get him some water, please?
I think one of the jurors
Will you take a break or you want to keep going?
I think one of the jurors needs some water.
Do you need to take a break, sir?
I'm gonna step outside and clear my throat.
Okay.
Well, like I think we have to take a break. If it's a juror, he can't, like they can't step out. They have to hear the testimony.
Then we will be in recess in place for a few minutes, but you can step back.
Okay. So, and that's the worst when your throat gets dry in the middle of court. Like that is the absolute worst.
Moving out of your residence.
Like going back.
We were discussing them moving out of your residence, and I asked you whether there was any issues or concerns with that. And then my follow-up question was, how much contact did you have with Z after he moved out? Like, did you maintain a relationship?
Sort of, like he calls me every once in a while.
Okay.
To catch up.
All right. And how would you just generally classify the nature of those conversations?
Cordial.
Okay. You indicated that you and him sort of connected under a spiritual or consciousness type video. Was that sort of consistently the theme of your relationship? Were those the types of things that you discussed?
We did at first, but not much after that.
Okay. And how would you describe Z?
It's kind of hard to describe. He's a nice guy, gentle, kind. Never raised his voice to me or anything.
Okay. Have you ever had any conflict with him?
I did, but it was over stupid stuff.
Okay.
Nothing earth-shattering.
Okay.
He left something out, or he's cooking leaks that stink up the house.
Got it.
Nothing.
This witness, to me personally, so this is just for me, this witness is not coming across credible for me. Like he seems to be protecting his friend. So this is just my thoughts. Does that make sense? Like I don't know him. I don't know what's happening, but I thank you. Yes, but and then so I'm going to try to see if I can find anything on YouTube. It's not coming across credible to me. Especially like the question of what was he coming back for in your house? And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, wait, like that was the whole reason why he was coming, because there was stuff in the basement. I thought he left some stuff there, but.
Okay. So after he moved out of your residence in 2015, is that when he left things at your house?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated you had an unfinished basement and you just
Correct.
allowed those things to stay in your basement. How often did you see him between 2015 and 2020?
Once or twice.
Okay. And would those have been times when he came to your home?
Yeah, I think I don't remember the timelines exactly. There was a couple times he was passing through and needed a place to sleep at one night as he traveling from A to B. So
Okay.
I let him sleep over.
All right. And you indicated when they came to your home in December 8th of 2020 that it was Z and Jason, and you said some girls. How many?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Like I said, I was on a Zoom call. I didn't really pay attention. They showed up. I opened the door and I went back to my call.
Okay. And when you say girls, are you talking about minors or women?
Women.
Women. Okay.
Sorry.
Were you aware that there was a child there?
Yes.
Okay. And what you observed the child as well?
I don't recall.
Okay. So when they got there, were you already working?
Yes,
And how much interaction did you have with them when they got there?
very little.
All right.
I told them to leave me alone and shut up. I'm on a work call.
Okay, so that was expressly stated.
Yes.
All right. And was it surprising to you that he had multiple women with him?
Surprising?
Yes. Let me ask you a better way. Did you know that he had multiple wives or that he was involved in some type of polygamous situation?
Sort of.
Okay. And
I never witnessed it
Okay.
until 2020, but
Okay. But you knew generally about it? Okay. And do you have any idea what time they arrived to your house on December the 8th of 2020?
I believe it was in the morning.
Okay.
But I don't really remember.
All right. Do you know how many vehicles they were in?
I think they had two, like a car and an RV,
Okay.
if I recall correctly.
All right.
A truck and an RV.
All right. And tell me, when they got there, where were you physically located in your
In
house?
my kitchen office. I had an office set up in my kitchen.
Okay. And did you have any appreciation while you were at your office set up in your kitchen where everybody else went in your house? No. Okay. And how long were they there before something significant occurred?
An hour maybe? I don't really know
Okay.
what the time scale was.
Okay.
Time.
When did you become aware that something was wrong or going on?
When I heard a lot of banging.
Okay.
I was on my call and I started hearing a lot of screaming and banging from upstairs, and that's when I went upstairs
Okay.
to see what's going on.
Describe to me more what you mean by the sound of banging.
I heard some. I'm sorry. I heard a bunch of screaming from Brian, and
What was he
then
screaming?
Open the door.
Okay.
I think. I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
So I can't say it was open. I don't know what he was screaming. He was going to open the door and banging on the door.
Okay.
And then I heard the crash of the door being kicked in,
Okay.
and that's when I went upstairs.
Okay. And what happened after you heard the crash of the door being kicked in?
So this is the part I don't really remember too clearly. I have read my police report, so I can state what I said there.
Okay. Well, if that refreshes your memory, that's okay. But if you don't have an
It
independent
actually
memory,
does not refresh my memory,
Okay.
but what I wrote in the what I said in the police report, which I don't actually.
I'm taking a breath because I'm not sure if this is helping the state. Like this, it's not coming on. It's not coming off. But like if all of this happened within 4 hours, it sounds like, and it could be, because I mean, can you imagine the aftermath of all that happened? He's moved. I wonder if he sold the house. Like, but this, we're gonna keep it going. We're gonna keep it going.
Recall now, which could be because of the trauma, but
Okay.
that
So he admitted this was a traumatic incident. So that helps. There were no substances involved for anyone. Um, the defendant is claiming not guilty by reason of insanity. I do have a link to to an overview of the case, and also a link there too. Huh. Court TV, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for this stream. I'm so glad that y'all are streaming this live, and this has been so helpful. And I do have the full link in the description for people that do not want my my interruptions. I have seen y'all on what is it? It is the Grizzly True Crime. I've seen y'all in her chat as well.
I went upstairs, I saw blood, and I went back downstairs
okay.
to call 911, and someone else was already calling them, so I didn't.
All right. After you said you heard him say things about open the door and you heard the door being busted down, Did you hear him scream or say anything after the door was open?
I heard, wailing,
What do you mean by that?
like crying, like he was monumentally upset by
Okay,
what had happened.
okay. You indicated that at some point you had said that you saw blood and then you went downstairs to call 911?
That's what I said in my police report.
Okay. What do you recall about where you went after you went upstairs and what you did?
Nothing, to be honest. I kind of like wandered in a circle in my house. Kind of in shock.
Okay.
And I just want to remind us this was a 13-month-old baby, and there are significant injuries to the child, and there are significant injuries to Chloe as well, self-inflicted. And I do not believe that she anticipated surviving. I'm not sure. So right now the state is presenting their case, and in their case they are saying this was intentional. She was jealous of the relationship that the baby's father had with his other wives. So that is what they are saying. The defense is saying that she was psychotic, and legally she has to not understand that her actions in that moment, that they were wrong, illegal. That's the McNaughton rule. And so we're going to keep it going.
In shock. What were you physically feeling at that time?
Horror.
Okay. Do you recall when you looked in the room who all was even in that room? Okay. Do you have any recollection communicating or assisting in communicating with?
So I do think he was, because you could hear him in the background. I think it was him helping give whoever was on the phone with 911, helping them give directions to the house. So you do hear him say, I believe it was him. We're going to hear it in a moment, that he was giving directions to the house. At this point, the father has his hand, like he's trying to stop. I think all the energy is being directed to Hannah, to the child at this point. I don't know if anybody is helping Chloe. I think their main concern was Hannah in that moment, especially knowing that Chloe did this to Hannah.
Any 911 operator?
No.
Okay. What do you recall about any response by fire, EMS, or law enforcement?
I remember the EMT carrying the baby down the stairs.
Okay.
That's about all I remember.
All right. And where were you at?
I was in the living room.
Okay. And did you have any idea what happened? Did you ever see Miss Driver come down and retrieve a knife from your kitchen?
I did not.
Okay. Did you have a knife block in your kitchen?
I did.
And where would that have been in relation to where you were working?
That is tragic. It was his home. It was his weapon. And what they were doing, they were traveling from North Carolina to Florida. That's what they were doing. I think she attempted to leave him in November. If we're remembering the timeline, and y'all can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. She attempted to leave him, and that's when he let her go, but she couldn't take their daughter. And not him, so not the person testifying, Brian or Ben Michael, whatever. Yeah, Z. Wow.
About 15 feet to my right and behind me about 3 feet. It was next to my stove.
Okay. The position that you were working in, would your back have been
Yes.
to where that knife block would have been? Okay. You said that you recalled them EMS carrying the baby down. What do you recall next in terms of what you did?
Police showed up. It just kind of spiraled out of, police were there. That's about all I remember. It was just kind of,
All right.
running around.
Did you have to go anywhere after that?
I had to go to the police station to give a statement.
Okay.
talked to Cruz, I think was her name. Very nice lady.
Do you know who else had to go to the police station to give a statement?
There were a bunch of people there, like 3 other people, I think.
Okay, were those people that had been at your house?
Yes.
Okay. And who were those people?
I don't remember. I know Jason was there, the Jason guy. I don't remember.
Okay, was he there?
You know, I don't remember seeing him there.
Okay. What about the other women?
Okay, so this was literally, this guy got caught in the middle of some mess. It sounds like he was just trying to be a good friend. And what happened was Brian Z. Benyamin. So he has 3 different names. Cult leaders often go by different names, and sometimes that's so they can avoid things, but he has aliases. And what will happen is they were living in North Carolina. They were known to move around periodically. And sometimes groups like this will move around to avoid drawing attention, to avoid people seeing kind of what's going on with a group. And so this gentleman, Brian, had some stuff in this guy's basement. So he was just supposed to stop by to get some stuff out the basement. And then they were they were traveling in 3 cars and a U-Haul, and they were relocating to Florida. That was going to be then the next move. Okay. And the defense is going to say that she attempted to run into traffic, that she was showing signs of mental health, and that that the leader, not this guy, but that Brian Benyamin, that he did not believe in traditional medicine. Chloe is on medication now. We do not know what her diagnosis is. It did not come up, but it sounds like she's been diagnosed with something about psychosis, and they believe that she was delusional at the time. It does sound like some of that has come up. I'm guessing the prosecution believes that she might have some mental health concerns, but that she, because of the note that she wrote in the hospital, because of some other evidence, the prosecution believes that she did have the availability. The last time she tried to leave him, he had taken their child. It sounds like she wanted to be with him. So since she's been in prison, I believe, like, she has called him, and it sounds like she might still love him. And so, like, that's what the prosecution is going to say. I hope this is helpful. And I do have a link to a Fox 5 article if you would like some more information on this case. I think it goes deeper than just baby blues. So early 20s, it's common for bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, some of the psychotic disorders. It can be common to have, if it is a legit psychotic break, early 20s is around the time that might happen. It does sound like there might have been some DV in the relationship as well. Cults like to use manipulation, control, like coercive control is what a cult is. I still haven't heard anything that would justify what happened. And so at this point, but I want to hear from the prosecution. I want to hear from the defense. This is just day 1 of trial. That's what we're listening to now.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I was in a waiting room. So
You were in a waiting room at the police department? Okay.
yeah, there was like 1 or 2 other people there, so I don't know who all was.
Okay. All right. Did law enforcement serve any kind of search warrant or do any
Yes.
work at your residence?
Yes,
And what do you know about that?
they served me a search warrant and searced my house. That's
Okay.
all I know.
Okay. And did you cooperate with their investigation? Okay. Do you still stay in touch with Z?
Like I said, we talk every once in a while, but
Okay. Not really.
Yeah.
When you say we talk every once in a while, like, how does he call you or do you call him?
he calls me.
Okay. And is the nature just like seeing what you've been up to?
Yes.
Okay. How do you classify your and his relationship?
acquaintances, friends, friends, not close friends, but friends.
Okay. And has he ever shared with you? You said that you were sort of peripherally aware that he had multiple wives. Has he ever discussed with you sort of the?
No.
None of that. Okay. Have you ever inquired?
No.
Okay. One moment, Your Honor.
We get to fast forward. Cross-examination. So we're getting to cross-examination.
You said you've known Z since what year, approximately?
I believe it was 2015.
Okay. You're also aware that there was another female involved with Z prior to Ms. Driver, correct?
The prior,
Girlfriend that lived at your house in 2015.
was there? I don't remember.
Well, let's talk about that. You recall talking to the police, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You told the police that in your interview that in 2015,
I wish the state had corrected some of his testimony because it seemed like he was being vague, but the defense is about to impeach him on the stuff that they know that he just didn't say. I'm not a lawyer, just a psychologist, but to the jury, this can look like the defense is getting to the truth and that the state didn't get this piece out of him.
Z came to live with you with a woman named Gabriella. Do you remember Gabriella?
Yes.
Okay. And that at some point she was pregnant, correct?
Yes.
And that you actually had them leave because you were a single man living there on your own and didn't want a baby at the house.
That's not true.
Well, if you told law enforcement that, you're disputing that
well,
now?
I just didn't want people in my house. Baby would be included in that.
All right, well, I can show you that.
I believe it.
Okay. And so actually in 2015, it was not Miss Driver then, it was Miss Kuykendall, correct?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And then subsequently, you said you've met Miss Driver prior to December the 8th of 2020, correct?
Yes.
All right, and you told Miss Gropper that you didn't recall anything odd about any of your previous interactions with her and Z, correct?
Correct.
All right, and on December 8th of 2020, you had very limited interactions with anybody other than Z, correct?
Correct.
You were sitting in your kitchen at your computer desk.
Yes.
On what I believe is there's multiple screens on your computer
Two
desk.
screens, yes.
Okay. Did you have headphones on?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have any idea of where the women were in the house?
No.
Oh, okay. And your interactions with Z were mainly for him to get his property out of your house, correct?
Correct.
All right. And I know you said today that you didn't have any idea of anything else that was weird or going on that day, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't have any.
And I heard on TikTok that can be an ADHD thing. So I always try to guess where things are going. Okay. So like yes, I am that person. My husband looks at me so mad when I accurately guess it. So when we watch shows, so we watch Tracker, we watch NCIS, we watch some like entertaining crime shows, and I'm always trying to guess who did it, who's seeming suspicious. And so yes, I always want to guess the end of the movie. If I don't have an idea of what it might be, no lie, because it causes me a lot of anxiety to not know. I will sometimes have to look it up because like I can't handle the like I don't know. And so that's for me and my therapist. Okay. Let's keep it going.
Any specific interactions with Miss Driver, correct?
Correct.
Or the baby?
Correct.
Or Jessica, one of the other two women?
Yeah, no.
None of them. Did you have
Other
interactions?
than maybe a hi, hello.
Okay, but nothing that stands out in your mind here
Nothing
today?
else.
Okay. And you only know him as Z, correct?
Correct.
Do you know Miss Driver by a different name?
I mean, I know she has a different name, but I don't remember what it
Okay.
was.
If I told you it was Kwani, would that ring a bell?
Sure, something like that.
Okay. So nothing stands out in your particular mind at this particular point.
So I think at this point, they are just trying to discredit this witness and make it seem like he is friendly to Z and that he's hiding something. Like that's what and really the prosecution, all they got out of him was that it was his house, he's traumatized, and it was his weapon, and he was there when they called the police. Like to me, that was what they got out of this witness. But the defense is now going to try to make him look so because the defense has admitted by claiming not guilty by reason of insanity, they've already admitted she did it. Like they're admitting she did it, but they're not admitting that she was jealous or that there was any motive or anything like that. They're not admitting that part. At the very beginning of the stream, the judge did a phenomenal job breaking this down, and I covered that at the beginning of this stream.
Time about anything unusual, you just were getting on your Zoom call, correct?
Correct.
All right. And, you know, Z had kept items at your house for several years, correct?
Correct.
And, you know, it was a fairly good sized house.
Yes.
And you had room in your basement to store some of these things. I think you described it being a guitar, among other things.
A what?
A guitar?
Guitar, clothing,
Okay.
books.
Were you kind of happy that he was coming to get his stuff out of your house?
Yes.
Okay. And I know you described him today as, you know, kind, gentle, whatever. Do you remember using other words at the time of your interview?
No.
Do you remember telling the detective crews that you considered him to be a pain in the ass?
Probably.
No, but he was at times.
Okay. And did you also describe him as, or make the statement that he was kind of crazy?
I may have.
Okay. And you follow that up by calling him a hippie and saying that he's weird, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. But nothing stands out personally about Miss Driver in your mind at all that day. Okay. And you talked about how you call him Z and that you're just more acquaintances, correct? Have you had it?
We're friends.
Okay.
We're not besties or anything, but I mean, I consider him a friend.
Okay. And nature of your relationship is what? Just talking on the phone or the internet, that kind of thing?
Phone.
Okay. Don't go out and hang out with him socially.
I haven't seen him since 2020.
Okay. And there's been, well, even before that, in 2020, he would just kind of reappear or randomly phone call you, correct? You have to answer out loud for the
Oh,
record.
sorry,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay. And there would be long periods of time where you wouldn't hear from him at all, correct?
Correct.
And then he'd kind of pop back up and say he was coming to stop by?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's kind of what happened in this particular instance, correct?
Yes.
You didn't know the day or two before anything that he was coming, he called you the day of?
He may have called me the day or two before and said, we're coming through, I'll pick up my stuff. I don't know when exactly it was, but it was in close proximity to.
But the day that he showed up, you were in contact with him and he was kind of giving you updates about when he thought he was going to arrive?
He may have texted me, I don't really remember.
Okay. Since 2020, what kind of contact have you had?
Phone calls, like we've spoken a few times, maybe a dozen times since then.
I'm sorry, a dozen?
A dozen,
Okay.
half dozen, in between there.
Since you found out when this case was scheduled for trial, correct? Have you had any phone calls with him?
I have.
About how many?
So I believe Z, Benjamin, Brian, he is incarcerated. So I believe they have I think they subpoenaed his phone calls. So she might be getting, I don't know if she's getting at any recorded calls, but we're about to hear where this is going.
Two.
And what were the nature of those phone calls?
Just he called me. I asked if he was coming to the trial because I had to go, and that was it.
You didn't talk about what testimony was or any type of defense information?
No, I not really.
Okay. If there was a recorded phone call with Z indicating that he's talked to you about the case, you would dispute that?
I did actually talk to him about something that the prosecutor.
Dude, like, so Z is in jail. His calls are recorded. She's asking you this question because she already knows the answer. When you're asked this question, it's like the child with the food all over their face, with the chocolate all over their face. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
Okay. And what was that?
The part of the defense.
Okay. So you told that to Z directly?
Yes.
And that was based on a conversation you had with,
Yes.
okay, and you were aware that Z is a witness either for the state
I
or
was
the
not aware of that.
Okay, he didn't tell you that,
He did not tell me that.
but you did give him that information, correct?
Well, he said he'd been talking to you.
In the state?
Both, the defense and the state.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Just briefly.
So the defense did a really good job discrediting him and making it sound like he is like almost protecting Z almost. Because if I was on the jury, I would not trust that he said Z is a good guy. I would not trust any of that at all. Like it came off like he was protecting his friend. That's how it came off to me.
Mr. Ablin, you indicated you talked to Z about something that you and I had discussed. Did you want to come to this trial?
Not really.
Okay. And did I explain to you why your presence at this trial was necessary?
Which is
and
why I'm
important?
here.
Okay. And are those the things that you discussed with Z?
Yes.
Okay. Did I tell you that one of the things we need to establish is how everybody reacted to the situation?
Yes.
Okay. And you had information about that his reaction, right? Okay.
It was emotional.
He was mortified.
A minute ago, you
And as a fact witness, you're normally not paid. So you normally have to take off a day from work. Sometimes there might be some compensation for travel. He doesn't even live in Georgia anymore. He sounds like he lives in Florida now or something. Like, and so sometimes you can apply for compensation, but that's not always guaranteed. I've testified as an expert, and as an expert, I clarify my fee up front, and that is I have a minimum amount that they have to pay because when I'm an expert witness going to court, I have to block off hours. Even if I'm on the stand for 30 minutes or however long I'm on the stand, I have to block off a significant amount of time. And so going to court, not fun, especially a televised, capital M of a baby, like who nobody wants to be associated with this. So I get it.
you said that you had told law enforcement that you kind of described him as like a crazy hippie. What do you mean by that?
Just, ultra hippie, love the earth kind of guy.
Okay.
Religious.
Okay. You indicated that you had discussions with him or connected with him over like higher consciousness and things
Yes.
like that. Do you share all of his belief systems?
No.
Okay. And does he respect that in terms of your
Yes.
relationship?
Yes, very much so.
Nothing further. Thank you.
I don't have any other questions, thank you.
All right. Then the witness may be excused.
Yes.
Lunch recess at this time.
We get to go through the recess and come back to. All right, so we're going to fast forward. For anybody joining, welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Barry. I'm a licensed psychologist. We talk about the psychological impact of crimes like this. I enjoy covering not guilty by reason of insanity cases because a person can have a mental health condition and not meet criteria for not guilty by reason of insanity. Even if Lori Vallow had had the NGRI defense available, I don't think she would have been found guilty. Like there was so much covering of the crime that she did and lying and all those that a person who's truly insane, like the legal protections are for people that completely lose it and do not understand the wrongfulness of their actions. They will often feel that they were justified, or I don't know, like there will often be something like that. It came off like he was protecting him. I have testified in so I've done mostly juvenile relations court. So I used to supervise visits for individuals involved with social services. I've done psychological evaluations that were court ordered, but related to juvenile relations, not related to the crime was alleged child harm, but and sometimes I've assessed the child, sometimes I've assessed the adult. I never assess both. And I don't do parenting capacity evaluations. So I've testified probably over less than 20 times, but more than 10. So somewhere in that range. All right, we will keep it going. But I've never testified in criminal court. I am not a forensic psychologist, so there are forensic psychologists on this app. One of my favorites is Dr. G Explains. He's one of my favorite forensic psychiatrists on this app. He does a lot of body language analysis. He does not talk about like guilt or any diagnosis. He strictly analyzes the body language of individuals. So, all right, let's keep it going. Fast forward. They're coming back from lunch. It looks like she's put her hair up because her hair was down and she was playing with it. Like I mess with my hair all of the time, so I'm just making observations. So she's just looks like she's put her hair back some.
Trying to find the transmitter. Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can have a seat. Can you tell me your name?
My name is Gary Pruitt.
Okay, that's okay. And Mr. Pruitt, how are you employed?
I'm employed with Allied Universal Security Services, and I'm assigned to Lockheed Martin in physical security.
Okay, and prior to that role, how were you employed?
I was employed with the City of Somerville Police Department. Prior to that, I was employed with the City of Canton Police Department, and my first department that I worked for was, again, the City of Somerville.
Okay, how long have you been in law enforcement?
I was in law enforcement on and off from November of 2017 until June of 2023.
Okay, and for what period of time were you employed with the City of Canton?
I was employed with the City of Canton from February of 2019 until March of 2021.
Okay, and so I want to draw your attention to December 8th of 2020. What was your role with the department at that time?
On December 8th, 2020, I was assigned to the Uniform Patrol Division, and I was doing things such as enforcing municipal and state laws and ensuring the safety of the public in the City of Canton.
Okay, and on patrol.
So there is a button I can push in StreamYard where it makes me stop presenting and I accidentally push that button. I was trying to find something and let's go back just a little bit. All right.
On patrol in that role you were in at that time, how would you receive calls to respond?
I would receive calls from the Cherokee County Communications Dispatch Center over my police car radio.
Okay. And I want to talk to you specifically about a call that came through to respond to 215 Mountain Vista Boulevard. Do you recall that?
I do.
All right. Where were you at when you received that call?
I was in my patrol vehicle parked in the back of a cemetery that was located off Scott Mill Road in Canton near Marietta Road.
Okay. And do you recall what time you got that call?
Approximately 2:27 p.m.
2:27 p.m. And what was the information that you had when you were responding?
Well, the call came out. It was that a mother had killed her baby with a knife.
Okay. And when that's being transmitted, is it being transmitted to you over radio or?
It was over the radio in my patrol vehicle.
All right. And at that time when you got the call, did you have any appreciation for who was going to arrive at that residence first, or were there other responders involved?
I was the initial dispatched officer. Sergeant Jose Soto also responded to the scene. It could have been whatever officer decided to respond as well, but due to the priority of the call, as many officers that were available would have decided to respond. Sergeant Soto and I arrived on the scene at pretty much the exact same time.
Okay. And how far was that 215 Mountain Vista Boulevard from where you were at?
From the cemetery, I would estimate it was anywhere from about 1.5 to 2.5 miles.
Okay. And what do you recall about the timing of your arrival compared to other officers?
I would say very much the same. Sergeant Soto and I were in different parts of the city, and we were both running with our emergency lights and sirens going, and we arrived there pretty much simultaneously, but Sergeant Soto ended up getting inside the residence before I did, but it was only a difference of maybe 35 seconds.
Okay. And were both yourself and Sergeant Soto equipped with body-worn cameras?
Yes,
Okay. Was that part of your agency's policy?
it was.
Okay. Is that something that you have to turn them on, or do they automatically come on?
You have to physically press the button to record with the.
So we're talking about body cameras, and I love questions, y'all. Okay, so we are here for the questions. So how many members are required to reach a cult status versus a small group of people being controlled by a person, or the women being harmed? My thoughts is one family, because all you need is a leader and people with some out there beliefs, and there are some characteristics that make up a high demand or high control group. And sometimes it's easier to talk about high control or high demand versus cult, because if you tell somebody you're in a cult, they're going to be like, no, I'm not. But if you tell somebody, it sounds like that group tries to control your money. It sounds like they're controlling what you eat, when you sleep, what you wear. Sometimes talking about it from the perspective of control lets you have a more open conversation. Because if you tell somebody you're in a cult, they're going to be like, no, I'm not. So I sold. Okay. Anybody in the chat ever work with vector marketing? Vector marketing or Cutco cutlery. So I sold Cutco. It's supposed to be, they make themselves out to be the very best knives in the world. And they end up it's not technically, but like what they do is they tell you these are all the reasons why every other knife is the worst knife ever. And so they really are great knives. And I fully believe in Cutco cutlery. Like I love it, but the if you've ever seen like a conference for, like, sometimes it can start to feel like groupthink a little. Because you wouldn't work for Cutco believing that. I think their competition back when I used to sell them, it was a company that started with a H, like Hankman, or I don't know, it was something that started with a H, a Japanese knife, like that was the one that was the best. And so if somebody had told me that I like that there was some, well, like this is a little strange, like maybe you love these a little too much, I would have been like, no, no. But then if it was like, wait a minute, like, I don't know, like if they had pushed back on that, it definitely was the MLM. I made money based on what I sold, but I think the person that owned the group, I think he made a percentage. So I didn't make more. I don't think I made more by having somebody else join. I don't think I ever invited anyone. I could be wrong, but I still have them. I still have them. I can't remember the name of the other company. Henkel. It was Henkel something. It was Henkel. I remember because I had the little pitch memorized. And so there can be times that groups or organizations are I'm going to say it. Our military, the boot camp process is meant to break down a person and then have them be a part of military culture and military. And I say this as somebody that treats military service people. I have family that are active duty in the Army, in the Air Force. My dad is retired Air Force, but the military has this kind of like us versus them, and then like there's infighting between the Marines and the Air Force. So like Marines think they're really like the Air Force people, you just weren't strong enough to qualify for the Marines, or I don't know. Like there can be some things that happen. They and the goal of boot camp is to break you. Like it really is. And so yeah, it's a whole thing. But I support our it's a whole thing. So grad school was a breaking down of the soul, the mind. It was I call it it was I don't know if I can say torture on YouTube. It was it was painful, grad school, and there was constantly this, "Do you really want it?" Like, there were these constant things of, "Do you really want this degree?" There were these milestones that you had to jump through, and I kept doing I jumped through all of them, so, all right, let's keep it going. I think we're getting to the body cam, okay? And I don't think they're gonna show the body cam. We're probably gonna hear it, okay? This is probably gonna be emotional. Take care of your mental health. I do believe, and I think they're gonna take a break after they play that portion, and then he comes back. Let's go ahead and get to this part.
Body cameras as well as stopping the recording.
Okay. And so tell me about your response when you got there. What did you do and how did you proceed?
Well, when I arrived on scene, I had not initially realized that Sergeant Soto had already entered the residence. I parked my vehicle in front of the house and I went up the driveway and spoke with a Caucasian elderly male that was later identified to me as, I believe, Gerald Martin, and he was the homeowner.
Okay.
And at the time I didn't realize that my sergeant had already entered the residence, so I told him to stay outside where my sergeant could see him, and I asked him, where the woman was at, referring to Miss Driver, and he informed me that she was upstairs, and that the people at the house were friends of his, and that she and the baby were upstairs. And shortly after that point, I entered the residence.
Okay. And did you proceed directly upstairs?
Yes, to the best of my recollection, I started out in the downstairs living room. There was a female that was later identified to me as Jessica Caffergan, I believe. She was standing in the living room.
I'm just gonna check. He's reading from this report.
You can reference your report if you need to refresh your recollection, but you can't read from it. So,
Sure.
Sustained objection. Go ahead.
if you need to look at it to refresh your memory, that's completely fine. Just let us know.
Sure.
So you said you initially encountered the homeowner, Gerald, where was he located?
He was outside the residence in the driveway.
Okay. And then you said you went into the living room and observed someone later identified you as Jessica Caffergan?
Yes, she was standing in the living room, and I believe she was on the phone.
She was on the phone. Do you know who she was on the phone with?
No.
Okay.
Nice.
And what other people did you encounter at that house?
After seeing Jessica, I proceeded up a staircase that led to the second floor, and there was another female, I believe her name was Sarah Stiles, and after I saw her, I told her to go downstairs. I didn't believe that she was the suspect. She didn't have, to my recollection, she didn't have any blood or anything on her. I told her to go downstairs, and that's when I began to proceed toward where the bedroom where the incident had taken place was at.
Okay. And who was located in the bedroom when you got in there?
Sergeant Soto was in there. He had probably only been in there maybe half a minute at most prior to me getting into the bedroom. It was a man named Jason Spillers who was kind of kneeling over Chloe Driver, who was laying on her back on the floor next to the bed. It was Benjamin Ben Michael. He was standing over the mattress and had his hands near the neck area of Hannah Driver, an infant who was bleeding profusely and covered in blood, as well as the mattress. So it would have been myself, Sergeant Soto, Jason Spillers, Benjamin, Hannah Driver, and Chloe Driver. So 6 people total at that point.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to review yours and Sergeant Soto's body cam video from that day?
Oh, yes,
Okay. And do those truly and accurately reflect the scene as you recall it?
they do.
Your Honor, at this time, I would tender states 3 and 4.
No objection.
Aaron, they're in the chat.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to publish the first 7.5 minutes of State's Exhibit 3.
No objection.
I'm laughing because of the chat. All right, so we're gonna breathe. I think we're gonna hear screaming. Okay. So I just want you to prepare. Sometimes not seeing it, your brain will try to create a mental image. So please just know to breathe. And if it gets to be too much, definitely you can catch me on the next one. Okay.
Your Honor, I'm pausing at 34 seconds. I just want to make the record clear. I'm publishing Sergeant Soto's body cam video, which is State's Exhibit 3.
She's upstairs? Where you at? Is it her?
No.
All right. Where's the weapon?
I may not have a gun. Please hold her, please.
I got you. We're gonna help her, but is she armed?
No, the knife is on the floor outside them,
It's okay.
further enough away. He's holding the baby.
All right. Where's she at? Okay. Who stabbed?
She stabbed the baby while the door is locked. She's in the house. I think the suspect. She's
Right there.
She's looking.
Go ahead and go.
Too. Please, I don't think you should move without doing it. Break your
I
neck.
got you. Sergeant Cherokee. Go ahead and send me in, man.
It's just better not gonna be.
Did she stab herself?
She's like.
Okay.
Don't move your hand. Don't move your hand.
Just keep pressure on her, okay? I need gloves. You got gloves?
EMS.
13 Cherokee.
Dang it. EMS.
And so she's also having to breathe as she watches this. And I will pause it periodically just so we can reset.
Hey, get a towel.
What?
Hey,
I mean, he's complaining. You can. It's okay.
I need hey, tell somebody to get me a towel.
Stay focused.
13 Cherokee. Fire stand 23.
So I see real tears. This is likely very, very but I wish she had gotten help. I talk about safe ways of leaving DV situations. Yeah.
Where's the baby hurt at? Where's he hurt at?
She got a little poke in her neck.
Okay.
Little poke in her neck.
Little poke on her neck? Okay.
Don't move your gun.
Stop. Hold on. This is the suspect, brother. Go ahead. She's the suspect. No, she slit her throat. Yeah.
Go upstairs. I'm gonna stay in my room.
Yeah.
Get them out here. Get their information. I have to get pressure on this woman. She's slit her throat.
Well, we got. I got a towel. Just give me a towel.
This is a very, very chaotic scene. Okay. And please, like, take care of your mental health. Like, that is the absolute most important thing. I am watching this with you all because I have watched other people watch some videos like this and they showed no reaction, no emotion, or it seemed very dramatized. Her reaction seems legitimate to me. And I once again, yeah, this is tough. So it is, so I want to hear from the experts before we determine if it was legal insanity, because a person can be psychotic and still understand that their behavior is wrong. A person can be delusional and still understand that their behavior is wrong. And I have worked with survivors of attempts, and I don't think she meant to survive this. And she's either going to go to a mental health facility or she's going to go to jail. And jails sometimes, depending on the jail, sometimes jails do still have trauma supports, or they have therapy. They have options available. Um, this so two things can be true at the same time. We are not on the jury, and I don't know if I would ever be a good jury person, because but I think I could. I think I could be non-biased. So at this point, I don't know one way or the other. Uh, it sounds like she Googled other methods of harming her child, and so because she is charged with felony capital M, and this is just super hard. We are going to listen to the video. I'm gonna press play. 3, 2, 1.
Just get there 39, bro. Just get there 39. Come on. Take him. Yo. Come on, go upstairs. Come on. Now you must quit now. Come on, quit. Just for life. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. She's up. She's got. He's got. Relax. Come on, buddy. Relax. Hey. We got it. They're here. Come on. Come on. She stopped herself in the neck.
Hold pressure.
Yeah. Where's the cut on it? Where's the cut on it?
And they did not question her sanity about whether she could see this part. I don't know whose voices we're hearing. I do believe that scar is I believe that scar is from this incident. And this is tough. All right. We are, and the video is being shown to the jury. Okay. Thank you, Court TV, for not airing the video. Thank you for not airing the video. Okay, we're gonna keep it going.
Calm down. Yeah. Where's the mother? She's right here.
Where's he? Yes.
Sir, come out the door now. Get out of the way. Get out the door now. Get out of the way. Get out the door. Get out the door.
Okay, this is getting really, really chaotic. Okay, they're gonna stop it in just a second. I'm gonna fast forward just a little bit. I think we have heard more than enough. Are you breathing? I'm gonna fast forward. If you'd like to see the full thing, it's available on Court TV. And I have the link in the description. So this is a good question. So when we say, so it was a group, so it's my understanding that they had some rogue spiritual beliefs, and the leader was her husband, and it was 4 of them. So it was the husband, she was the first wife, and then there were 2 other wives and the baby. So and Hannah. That was the group of people, and they traveled around. It sounds like that was the group. I haven't heard anything about them, like, recruiting other people or having meetings or anything like that. I don't know. I just heard about this case today. Um, and there's no evidence that it sounds like if she wanted to leave, he would let her leave, but it sounds like he wouldn't let her leave with the baby. That's what the defense has presented. The defense has presented that she attempted to leave with their daughter to live with her parents, and that she messaged her mom on her phone, and he went through her phone, found that, and I think he ran off with the baby or something happened, and so the parents came to get her, and they could only get her, and they weren't able to get her and the baby. The baby does not have a birth certificate, so it makes it hard for the courts when people stay completely off grid and there's no, because they left the hospital before the child could get their birth certificate. So there's paperwork you have to complete with the mother's name, father's name, social security numbers. Like there's paperwork you have to complete when you have a child. Um, in a hospital or even home birth, there's paperwork that you have to do. They never did that paperwork, and so this child did not even have a birth certificate, which would have made it difficult um, for her to file for custody or do any of those things. I think it would have been possible, and she was 20 years old at the time of this. That does not excuse anything. I'm just trying to help us all understand, okay? We're just trying to understand this because this is a very, very difficult case. Um, yeah. All right. Yes, please, please take a break. Take a break if you need a break.
348 Cherokee, is the caller the one that 51 the child?
So I think this is going to be his body camera, and then they're going to come back and talk to him some more. I think this is just his body camera, so we're going to skip ahead past the court break. Okay, get back into the testimony. So let's start here. I have about 10 minutes. Sorry. I have about 10 minutes left. So if you have any last minute questions, please let me know and we will go from there.
Watched, there was a individual that sort of sat down against the wall and you were talking to him. Who was that?
That was Jason Spillers.
Okay. And what did you observe about his physical demeanor when you were there interacting with him?
Once Jason went to the bedroom that was across the hallway from where the bedroom where the infant had been stabbed was, he went toward the wall, and I began talking to him and observed that he appeared to be frightened, in a state of shock. You know, he had a very shocked look on his face, and shortly after that point, he fell onto his bottom onto the floor, and he started crying shortly thereafter, at which point I began to gather information from him about, what his role was in the incident and, what had happened. So I began to conduct an interview with him.
Okay. And did you interact with anybody else on scene? Any other of the parties that were at the house when you got there?
I don't recall.
Okay. After that, sort of the portion of the body cam where you and Sergeant Soto and the EMTs were dealing with the immediate urgent needs, what happened after the baby and Miss Driver were taken by EMTs? What was your role at that point?
Once Chloe and Hannah were transported from the scene by EMS, I took more of administrative role in keeping a crime scene log and, chiming in when people got there, whether it was investigators, other officers, what time they arrived at the scene, what time they left. And I also stood by with detectives and eventually left. I believe I was at the residence for just a little over 4 hours.
Okay. What does it mean to keep a crime scene log?
It's a form that you keep in your patrol vehicle. Once something of a high priority happens, you take this log and you fill out like things like the address, and then you have an area where you can put the times people arrive on a scene and the times they leave, as well as their name and what title they have in law enforcement. And it's just a records keeping form to see, like to tell when somebody got somewhere versus when they left.
Okay. You said you were there about approximately 4 hours. Did you learn while you were on scene that Hannah had died?
I believe so, but I don't recall specifically if I did hear that while I was there.
Okay. And in keeping your crime scene log, are you aware at any point whether search warrants were obtained or there were any plans to process the crime scene by anyone?
The Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, along with the Canton's Criminal Investigations Division, did conduct a search of the residence. I wasn't involved in the warrant filing process, but I would imagine they did obtain a warrant to search the property.
Okay. And if you're not the right witness to ask about this, you just tell me, but what is the reason for the sheriff's office getting involved with the processing the scene for Canton Police Department?
Potentially better resources, more personnel, maybe more specialized training to conduct a more thorough and in-depth investigation into the crime scene.
Was it common for Canton Police Department to partner with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office to process crime scenes?
Yes.
Okay. Is at the house to Canton Police Department to be interviewed?
No.
Okay. One moment, Your Honor.
Nation.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Okay.
My name is Angela Trethway. It's nice to meet you.
You too.
Just want to ask you one question about your report after watching that body cam video. One of the things you noted in your report, do you recall any observation of Miss Driver in relative to a body position with respect to Hannah, the location of the two individuals?
I recall Chloe being supine or laying on her back on the floor, parallel with the mattress. And I recall Hannah laying on her back on the mattress horizontally, and Chloe's right hand being in the left hand of the infant.
So their hands were together?
Touching, yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Nope, nothing further.
Next witness.
Truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You can see. Can you state your name and spell it?
I am Officer Adam Yurkovsky. That's Yurkovsky, Yurkovsky.
All right. And how are you presently employed?
I'm currently employed with the City of Peachtree City Police Department here in Fayette County, Georgia.
All right. And how were you employed prior to that?
Prior to that, I was employed with the City of Canton Police Department for about 7.5 years.
All right. And what were your roles and responsibilities while at Canton?
I was a uniformed patrol officer. At the time of this call, I was a corporal, but at the time that I left, I was a sergeant.
Okay. And at the time of this call, are you referencing December the 8th of 2020?
That's right.
Okay. And what were your roles and responsibilities at that time?
I was a corporal on the uniform.
All right. So I just wanted to see if there were any last minute questions. Welcome, Purple Dragon. Thank you for that super chat. I mentioned that this case is being streamed by Court TV, and I have a link to their channel down in the description. This case is from December of 2020, and the defense is claiming not guilty by reason of insanity, which would mean that she would go to a mental health hospital, versus if she's found guilty, that she would go to state prison. So I think the state is fighting for her to go to state prison, The defense is fighting for her to go to a mental health facility. And it will be up to the jury to determine if she meets the legal criteria for insanity, which is incredibly difficult. The criteria for legal insanity is very, very high. And so um let me see this question. Can it be a bit of insanity when she thought this was an answer? Nope. So not because then a person can still understand that it's wrong. But so that desperation does not mean insanity. It doesn't. And I do believe that people do not have the right to take the lives of children. I do think that there is a different way. I have a lot of compassion for people in that position, in that state, that feel that there is no way out. I wish that she had been able to get resources. It sounds like he was monitoring her phone, so it would have been difficult. I don't think it would have been impossible. And it sounds like he loved his daughter. So if she had left first, and if she worked on, okay, I'm gonna go to the authority, like, but they're nomadic. They are not, they don't have roots. So they moved around a lot. And she might have been fearful that she could lose track of her daughter. That's definitely a real thing. But my whole big thing is don't do crimes. An innocent child was lost in the midst of this, and I don't think that's okay. And Zoe has checked the court record. The defense filed the not guilty by reason of insanity on September 10th of this year. And so I think at first she might have been saying not guilty. I don't know. I don't know what the defense was before this point, but the defense decided to go with not guilty by reason of insanity. I think her competence to stand trial. So there are question marks based on some of the questions the judge asked her at the very beginning, because the judge asked her if she was on medication. That was how we started this stream, was with the judge questioning her, and also if she understood that by going with not guilty by reason of insanity, that she's admitting that she did the thing. She's just saying that the reason was because she was legally insane versus because she was jealous or whatever the state is trying to say. I don't know that she was brainwashed. Like it doesn't sound like she was brainwashed. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like so we will see, because there might be some psychosis that comes up. There might be some delusions. Like, I really want to hear from the experts on this. My next stream on this one will be on Thursday at 10 a.m. I will check out the trial coverage from Wednesday and then also see where we are on Thursday. And we will go from there. Somebody said it sounds, yes, I agree, that uh and he was older. He was significantly older. Um so sanity for trial is a different thing. So competency to stand trial, Lori Vallow was found incompetent. Like, she was so delusional, she thought her lawyers were working for the government, or I don't know, like she was found, her competency was questioned. Lori Vallow is currently being assessed for competence because she wants to represent herself. And I don't think she's been working with her current attorneys, and her current attorneys requested to come off of her case due to issues that have come up, and she wants to self-represent. And so a state evaluator, like an independent, like, so the court will assign someone to evaluate her, and it's somebody that's like, that's just their job. They're a forensic evaluator, and they will assign somebody to do that. Um, I know that she was vegan. I can share a picture of her arrest. She does not look malnourished to me. I will share my screen. Present, share screen. I have a link to this article as well. This was her arrest picture. I believe this was at the time. I think this was after she got treatment, because you can see that there is a patch here, and she was likely put on SI watch when she arrived, but um, she doesn't look malnourished to me. It's an incredibly sad case, incredibly sad. Oy, oy. Zoe, I saw your comment. Um, is the insanity plea to avoid DP? So I think it's to avoid jail. I think the state has a pretty strong case, and their juries often, especially a mother doing this to the child that she loved, a lot of people have difficulty, how could, it sounds like a quote unquote crazy thing to do, but there is a such thing as like legal insanity, and that's what the experts will explain, and I like to help break that down. I do not know what her diagnosis was. um I do think that she was severely depressed. It sounds like there was stuff going on mentally. I'm also concerned about the controlling nature based on what the defense has said. I'm concerned about the relationship. The state is prepared for this, so the state knows that she's going with this defense, and after the defense presents, the state is going to come back with their rebuttal witnesses. All right. Um, so the evaluations have already occurred. So the state has already done their evaluations. Are you talking about Lori Vallow? Are you talking about Lori Vallow or somebody else? You might be talking about Lori. So competency to stand trial is simply, do you know who your lawyer is? Are you currently stable enough to understand the judge, to understand your charges? Because Lori Vallow might say, only God can judge me. Judges can't. The earth has no authority. I'm in the spiritual realm. If Lori Vallow's saying things like that, that would have people question her competence to stand trial. If that happens, they often go to a state hospital to have their competency restored. And what that therapy looks like is, this is the judge. It's medications, often antipsychotics. And then it's also, they also often do therapy to help orient them to, you are the defendant. Here are your charges. This is your lawyer. They're on your, they are advocating for you. You have to communicate with them in order for them to help you. You have to participate with them. You have to be cooperative with them. And so that's that. Not guilty by reason of insanity is at the time of the crime. Did you understand the wrongfulness of the act? Did you understand that? And because a person can have a break from reality and still understand that what they're doing is wrong. And so insanity is really hard. I like Nevada has guilty but mentally ill. I'll say that again. Guilty but mentally ill. And I covered that when I covered the Diobra Redden case, the case where the man jumped and went after the judge and her court person. I forget the exact name of the person, but that case was whew. And he ended up changing his plea from not guilty by reason of insanity to guilty but mentally ill. And what that does in Nevada is he will get mental health treatment for a period of time. He has not been sentenced yet, but the goal is that he gets mental health treatment and then that he fulfills the rest of his sentence in a jail. So that's that. I thank you all for joining me. I will be back on Thursday. I hope y'all have a good rest of your evening. Bye. Oh, and Court TV is finishing everything out if you want to stay on with Court TV. All right.